Yeah, you only needed to hear a second to know where this is going. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. For this video, we're looking at 08th MS Team, the first episode, War for Two. MS 08th Team seems to be a fan favorite. You know, getting into Gundam when I initially did, you'd always hear about 08th MS Team. Even I watched it and I enjoyed it, although I kind of considered it more closer to the bottom of my favorites, although I guess that kind of changes now that we get more into it. But the reason has to do with the character designs, the noses. But before we get started, if you haven't, please subscribe. There's a link in the description for a giveaway video where you can comment something that you'd like to get. So if you subscribe and commented, there's going to be 2 possible winners once I hit that old 1,000 mark of subscribers. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, so bear with me for a moment. Here is our main character, Shiro Amada. We learn about him from this first episode, War for Two. It doesn't have the typical conventional UC Gundam character design that I guess I'm familiar with from me being more of a recent fan of Mobile Suit Gundam, starting with UC and going through all the series. I was always put off by the character designs here. There was this contrast between the verisimilitude, the detail of the weaponry, the mobile suits, the atmosphere of the war. What's being reflected here in 08th MS Team is kind of the Vietnam era war, a little bit of Desert Storm thrown in. Sometimes it could be gritty, it could be depressing, it could be sad. And most of the characters are fun, but the 2 main characters have some odd designs to them that are actually quite common in other anime, especially anime of that time and another Gundam anime. But it's just hard for me to take it seriously at what I'm looking at. Here is Amuro Ray, everyone's favorite, and from Char's Counterattack. Now, I think this is a re-rendering probably used for a video game, but look at that nose. It's got the ridge. It's even got kind of the area where then the nose would kind of change its shape. And then it's got the shading. It's a more 3D developed nose. Now, again, this is a cartoon character, but there's more believability here. And from the recent Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway, here's Hathaway Noah. There's his nose. Again, we see the ridge line, we see the detail to where the nose is changing. Even though this is a cartoon, I feel like the detail here is lending to a real character, real human character. And to look at a female character from the same series from Hathaway, again, we have the ridge line. We can see where the nose changes shape, and then we also have the nostrils. So we're seeing a lot of depth with the nose that even with blurred vision, you can tell you're looking at a character's nose. And here's Aina from 08th MS Team. It's really just I mean, look, it does have that change to it, like the hook, but it doesn't have any other depth to it. When I'm looking at this character's face, I am seeing maybe a cartoon character, like I would say something more akin to I don't know, like SpongeBob or, you know, a Nickelodeon cartoon where the characters had a caricature style to them that wasn't supposed to be mimicking real life, but was supposed to heighten specific attributes. And I think the eyes are another issue for me here. If we can look at how just the eyes look, they have that slanted nature. They're rather large, even though we do see that. If we look at Gigi's eyes from Hathaway, we can kind of see where that has the circular shape within the eye socket. Now, from another Gundam series that I'm not as familiar with, except for the designs, is Gundam Seed. And when we look at the characters here, it's that same look that is from the main characters of 08th MS Team, and that is having the less detailed nose, the really big and exaggerated eyes. Again, this makes them look less human-like, and it looks like I'm looking at some cartoony caricatures. And I just wanted to add another one that's older than Hathaway, if maybe that was the argument you're trying to make. Well, Hathaway's newer, it's more detailed. Here's Kuwaraki from Stardust Memory, and we could see the detail on his nose. Not only does he have the nostril detail, but also the underside of the nose where the nostril eyes is also detailed. Again, it almost looks like I am looking at a human, and we can see with the pupils here, they're not at the top and the bottom. There's actually some separation there, so you can kind of get a better visual representation of the character. And that reminds me of video games. A lot of times it's hard to take video game characters seriously when their eyes just kind of look dead and not realistic. When you have the lack of the whites at a top or a bottom, depending on the situation, it's really hard to really understand what the characters are doing. Now, I will kind of say I'm nitpicking. I kind of hate that I'm jumping into this, but just the reason I'm doing that is because this is something that put me off as a kind of a newer fan of anime and getting into UC Gundam. When I saw these character designs, I had trouble taking it seriously, being pulled in, because it seemed like I was seeing a cartoon character that I couldn't really associate myself with. Now, with that out of the way, let's just enjoy ourselves here. And as we all know, this series opens with a banger, and when I first heard it, I didn't like it because it is very Japanese anime-y style music. It's not music I listen to. I'm more of a metal guy, a synthwave guy. I like movie or soundtracks, movie or TV soundtracks, but this music, it was just like a Japanese pop song, not my thing. But it didn't take long for it to seep into the crevices of my brain and to really become part of me, to where whenever I see 08th MS Team, just the words displayed anywhere, the song pops into my head. There is something about this song that it's just a classic good song. Even if on first listen you're like, what is this? And for someone that is new to Gundam, I mean, you can watch this opening and get a really amazing sense of the war, of the battling, of the machinery, the realistic nature of how things are detailed. And again, that contrasts the main character designs, but I don't want to keep touching on that. Very cool to see this interesting style. It's not even a mobile suit, but we can see where kind of the gun tank engineering is applied to this sort of crane-like mobile crane that the Federation is using when they're trying to get a mobile suit out. Kind of interesting to see this because 08th MS Team takes place during UC 0079, the 1-year war. This looks like something that would have been there for maybe 50 years or so. And it's a Gundam head. Maybe it just looks cool, but I don't know if there's any other explanation for this unless it was just a badly damaged head. It was maybe rolling through the forest or the jungle, and I guess some debris fell on it to just give the appearance that it's older than it is. The beginning does a really good job, again, of setting the tone for how realistic it seems when we have these ground-based mobile suits. We have operations taking place. We have people doing their jobs, and we're kind of introduced somewhat limited to some of the characters that show up for the rest of the series. Yeah, so drinking in a cartoon, this isn't for kids, right? Don't they call that out a lot of times in modern cartoons? You can't really show a character drinking alcohol. I mean, they didn't say alcohol, but someone even calls them out for drinking on the job. And during this opening, we meet Karen, Elidor, Jadan, so some of the characters that we're going to be seeing more often. Okay, you cannot complain about Double Zeta Gundam being too goofy when this show opens with this. All right, now we're going into space. We're going to be meeting some new characters, but it's really cool to see this transport ship going to Earth. And for a lot of these characters, we're meeting some of the 08th MS Team. This is their first time to Earth, and they're kind of excited about it. Now on this transport ship, we meet Mikkel, Sanders, and Shiro. And again, they're heading to Earth. They're really excited about it, haven't been there before. But Shiro gets a glimpse of something going on, and they're surprised to see that there could be a battle occurring. And as we get to know Mikkel a little more, he writes in a journal for a reason. Cool to see Zaku and GM already fighting on this first episode in space. That contrasts from how the series is primarily focused on the ground, but it's still cool to see some space battles. So Shiro just had to go out there and help out, and he jumps into a ball to do this. Now, if we watched MS Igloo, that I did a review on before, we can see that the ball can really stand its own against Zaku's, and this is a good example of that. And out there in a busted GM is Sanders. And look at that nose. And just to give a detail on Aina's mobile suit, it's a MS-06RD4 Zaku High Mobility Test Type. So kind of interesting. Again, this is during the 1-year war. So we have these Zakus that are high mobility, and it's a test type. And the colors are pretty cool, very unique. And this is what she's actually out in space in, where Shiro meets her with his ball. That didn't sound right. And so the ball has all these little tricks up its sleeve. It gets itself wrapped up, kind of giving room for Sanders to take off in his damaged GM. Before they blow up, the ball opens the cockpit, so does the Zaku, and Shiro sees the pilot, and he's like, oh, a woman. All right, and then what reminds me of the end of the original Mobile Suit Gundam, we have a pilot in a red suit, a pilot in a white suit, and they are going into the kind of destroyed area to kind of do an on-foot battle now. this is either a Magellan or Salamis class ship. I couldn't figure it out exactly. I was trying to do some research on that, but it's the green color, which we'll sometimes see like with the Salamis. But yeah, they are heading in there. So Shiro is homing in onto her. He has his gun out ready to shoot. Aina, is going to shoot back, but doesn't have any bullets left. So she was willing to take him out. He doesn't shoot her and in fact wants to save her. And he even brings up, hey, take off your helmet so we're not wasting oxygen. Let's figure out a plan to get out. And their plan really is to set off some fireworks and explosion on the ship in order for that to catch attention from either Zeon or Federation soldiers to come and save them. And earlier she brought up that she didn't want to be a prisoner. She didn't want to have to go with him, but also he doesn't want to be a prisoner by going with Zeon. He'd rather just stand out there and just wait for the Federation to hopefully show up. And so even though there's two Zaku standing out there that just saved Aina, Shiro was now seeing the oncoming GM that's damaged, and the Zakus were going to take it out, but Aina said, no, don't. It's not worth it. It's damaged. We'll just take it out anyway. And I thought that was odd. I thought, hey, well, they would just take it out anyway, right? Well, as they're heading back, the Zakus are heading back, she's saying in her head, I'm glad that went that way. I think she was even scared that they were just going to take it out. She's a Zeon soldier, and so she's starting to get feelings for this Federation guy. And this Federation guy was pretty cool. He could have shot her when he decided not to, and even did his best to save her. So we're kind of seeing the building blocks there of these characters really kind of feeling for each other. Really cool. We get to see Gihren and Garma. So this is probably shortly after Garma's death. Gihren is doing a kind of his whole propaganda thing, just kind of getting more of that world building going on within Gundam. And Shiro, he doesn't really care about what's on TV. He's just looking down at the watch that was given to him by Aina. He's still thinking about her. So we could see the beginning of the series 08 MS team. Its strong suit here is it trying to establish the relationships of the characters of Shiro and Aina. And then the typical cool ending. Music's actually pretty catchy, but it's kind of cool to see them just chilling on the ground. Just some other elements of world building. And I was saying, in general, this isn't really an exciting episode, but what it does well is establish the characters, mainly between Shiro and Aina, but we get to see a lot of Sanders, Mikkel, and even some of the other on the ground. But as we go further in, we'll get to meet more characters. So anyway, that was a brief overview of the first episode of the 08th MS team. And again, I'll be going through all the episodes, but really wanted to not only start with the first episode and, the character development there, but really talk about the design, because I do think that's kind of an interesting aspect when it comes to Mobile Suit Gundam. I typically enjoy the design of the characters, considering that it is cartoon animation, but I think it was not the norm with the styles of the main characters, but I think it just met the needs of the time. We're really going back, you can just see how timeless the designs of the original 1979 Mobile Suit Gundam was, even compared to this. I'm actually curious what you guys think. What do you think of the designs of the two main characters versus something like the original Mobile Suit Gundam and their designs? I think this was going for that stylized look, and sometimes a stylized look is more about the times and not necessarily something that is beyond time. I don't know what I'm trying to say there, but I'd like to see what you think. Yeah, leave a comment below and like the video if you liked it. And Sig Zeon. See you guys. Well, hey, Gundam fans. Welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. Today, we're continuing our look at 08th MS team with the second episode, Gundams in the Jungle. So we had the first episode where it kind of more or less focused on the characters, us getting to know them, less about the Gundams. But with this episode, it's really jumping into the different Gundams. Really good scenery, really good composition, just in terms of filmmaking, storytelling. Yeah, so we'll dive into that. Hey, but before we get started, if you haven't, please subscribe. There's a giveaway going on, link in the description for that. And as you watch this video, if you like it, give it a like. Yeah, that would help. So yeah, let's go. All right, so here's the whole team together. They've landed on Earth. It's kind of cool seeing them all together already. Obviously, some of the other characters are already down on Earth, but yeah, they're rolling out to where their first mission is going to take them. Now, is Shiro already thirsty? He just met Karen, or is it just the acting just kind of sounds like that? I don't know. Very cool shot here. Okay, it's just so cool how we're seeing these ground Gundams, and again the composition here, right? So it's using some sort of what you would call, I think, parallax, or it's where they have different panels of the art. They have the matte painting of the background. They probably have some foreground animation and probably some stuff in between there, but it really helps kind of show off the scale and the scope of how big these things are, especially when this is really primarily focused on the ground battles. So we're really getting a good idea. But it's also interesting how these are just straight up Gundams, from something I've learned recently. We see the GM, the GEMs, that's supposed to stand for a Gundam. So the idea that, the GMs don't have the V-fin, but then we have these with the V-fin, I think is very interesting how it's kind of like this mass-produced Gundam type. I do like the world building that's going on a little bit here at the beginning, where we have people that are used to being out in space, being out in the colonies, and then them on Earth. They talk about the smell, finding the smell on Earth unique. Talking about the air conditioning, say it feels good to finally be able to breathe unprocessed or uncirculated air. Something I really gotta give a hand to when it comes to 08th MS Team is the dialogue. As you get to learn about the characters, it's in context of the world they're in. Space versus Earth, mobile suits on the ground versus space. So yeah, for those of you that really like Gundam and want to get immersed in the world, this does a really good job of it. So as they're getting briefed on their secret mission, you can kind of hear the other officers sort of gossiping about the crew that has been put together. And so their mission really revolves around some sort of Xeon factory in the area. And the Federation wants to be able to kind of seek it out, see what they're up to. And they made mention of civilians in the area, so to be careful. From my understanding, a lot with 08th MS Team is the idea that this kind of takes some ideas of some of the real world war that would have taken place, Vietnam specifically. So you kind of have the jungle setting. They talk about the civilians in the area. And, some of the gossip going around is talking about Sanders as the team killer, whereas members of his team usually gets killed. And I guess that kind of bothers them. And of course, that would bother anyone. They really don't want to have to be responsible for death or be known for that. Okay, so the team is kind of getting their machinery, their weapons, most of them getting into their mobile suits. But the difference is with these two. So Elidor and Mikkel are in the hover truck. This kind of helps in a way with reconnaissance. It gives information to the rest of the team. It kind of has some radar stuff going on where it can penetrate the ground, kind of get an idea of where a mobile suit might be in the area or some other kind of weaponry, machinery. And here's kind of a look at it. Very cool looking. And you can actually get this in Gunpla form. I think it comes with some ground war version of a ground unit, a ground Gundam, and I think a couple of tanks, possibly. And I want to say, is it that the option part set for the new Robot Spirits might include that as well? So it's got a 20mm Gatling gun. Yeah, and it reminds me of when I'm playing SD Generation Genesis. I have that as one of my units. Yeah, I really only have a Gatling gun to use. But the underground sonar probe is the main feature here. It's a sonic spying device. So it was developed in response to the inability to use conventional radar to search for enemies on the battlefield under the dispersal of Minovsky particles. So there you go. All right, and here we have a look at the ground Gundam. So let's dive in a little bit to that. So here's the RX-79G Gundam ground type. It's a limited production mobile suit, first featured in 08th MS Team. The Gundam ground type was one of the early prototypes for the Earth Federation's mobile suit mass production plan, produced in limited numbers before the recovery of the RX-78 Gundam's combat data. As its name suggests, it was designed solely with the ground combat in mind, and all space use equipment, as well as the core block system, were omitted. Okay, so the space use equipment, core block system omitted makes sense. This caused the Gundam ground type to be lighter, allowing it to rival the performance of the RX-78 while under gravity, which obviously makes sense. Being on land, core block system not as necessary, as that's some of the transformable needs that you can do in space. Even though we see that happen in the Earth's atmosphere in the original Mobile Suit Gundam, it's a lot easier without the gravity to be able to use that configuration. So in order to save time and cost, the RX-79G was constructed using surplus parts for the RX-78. So in total, 20 units were produced. So this wasn't mass production. This was limited based on the RX-78 1 prototype, and they call this the RX-79. So that kind of gives more information about that, whereas they were still early in their mobile suit production, or the Federation was. And so with the ground combat that was needed, they were able to kind of develop this more cost-effective uh, Gundam to be able to mass produce the Gundam, but still required limited numbers. Now, and this was basically, like it said, off of spare parts. So this kind of helps with the in-universe lore about how come there's not just tons of Gundams in general mass produced, the RX-78 too. They had to take a lot of things into account. And again, the RX-78 2 just being a prototype core block system used mainly in space. They had to make some changes in order to limit mass produce them for ground combat. And really cool to get a look at a Zeon DOP, kind of designed in the more updated and detailed way that 08 MS team kind of lends to its designs. And again, and I've mentioned this in previous videos, but the DFA-03 DOP is the Principality of Zeon's only atmospheric fighter aircraft during the One-Year War. It appeared in the anime series Mobile Suit Gundam 08 MS team. And I think, an interesting thing about this is these were produced for the atmospheric flight. So with the ground battles that were occurring in 08 MS team, you had the Federation creating the ground Gundam for that specific use, and you have this DOP also created for that specific use. Okay, and here we're kind of just going back to the Zeon side of things. Aina just arrived in that DOP to meet up with her brother, embracing each other in maybe a creepy way, or maybe they're just that close. Very cool. I love that animation of it lifting. The team is going out at night for their mission to look for this base where they'll run into some Zaku's. And it's cool to see Shiro kind of take the lead here. I guess the idea, the team wants to be able to protect the commander, but he wants to lead. He wants to, it's a mix of him kind of having that confidence. Obviously, he was able to show himself by using just a ball to fight a Zaku. But at the same time, he kind of wants to show his team that he knows what he's doing. Something he has to get over, though, is using a Gundam or using a mobile suit in general on land instead of in space, which is what he was used to originally. Really cool shots here. I love how they portray these ground Gundams. All right, and this is the hover tank using its little sonar, sonic sonar there, picking up information of what's going on. All right, and so, the Zaku's are in the jungle too, so they have engaged with the enemy, and some battling takes place. And Shiro kind of getting his bearings on being on land, kind of messes up where he's really just trying to partly show off, but partly lead his team. Now this is a cool shot. Shiro's lost. The team is looking for the commander. He's kind of embarrassed. They decide not to go look for him and find him because they're afraid to embarrass him, and hopefully he comes back on his own. But then they kind of get Shiro on some little adventure here. Shiro's fumbling around, just trying to find his way back. He got out of his Gundam, fell into some mud, comes across some water so he can drink and potentially bathe, but he comes across someone. And nothing I can really show off here, I guess, unless I get the video taken down, or if I want a good thumbnail to get some viewers. I don't know what would happen there, but there's frontal nudity here, which I guess it's kind of an odd thing here. In the story, she is 17 years old. That is kind of technically considered illegal in some territories. But really, at the end of the day, it is sort of harmless, really. It's not being used in a derogatory way. This is just a person bathing, and you see this guy who's not much older than her anyway, obviously has interest or is, surprised to see that. So you can kind of see where it's just kind of interesting where these mindsets collide of, what is acceptable, what is not. But I guess, for purpose of this video, I can't really show any of that. And Aina and her brother are speaking. He's talking about how that test unit was lost, and he's asking, was that absolutely necessary? And she's, like, hey, it had to do with my life. Is that okay? So I kind of like some of the dialogue that's going on here, because you can kind of see her side of the things, even being with Zeon, compared to her brothers, even though she loves her brother. Her brother Guineas mentions the Osprus. That's kind of the experimental mobile armor that we'll get more of a look at here. But then also it pans up to a portrait of Degwin Zabi, so you can kind of see their kind of commitment to the cause of, I guess, more of the Zabi family in general. And so from the first episode, Shiro got Aina's watch. She kind of handed it to him as like a pocket watch, and it kind of goes off while he's at that water at the little lake or pond or whatever. And so Kiki hears that, and so she's kind of offended that someone is creeping on her, and she starts shooting at him, and he runs away. Kind of a goofy little scene. Cameron's kind of talking trash to Sanders. It's sad because Sanders seems like such a swell guy, and she just kind of has that attitude whenever she feels like it. Yeah, I don't know. But they're kind of out there waiting. They're kind of taking turns, just waiting for the commander to come back. They have to kind of watch for him. Shiro, back in the jungle, is in his mobile suit, comes across Zaku, and they have a showdown. Really cool animation here. Again, they really do ground the combat, which is excellent. Really makes this look good. And so Kiki happens to watch that happen, and so maybe that is of her interest because it shows that the Federation is kind of stopping Zeon, if indeed Zeon does have their factory out here and maybe causing trouble for the local population. Very cool shot here because this is closer late evening, the sun's going down. Just the way they've drawn this, where the sun is kind of casting light in a way where you have the shadows, but then you have the pilots working on their mobile suits. A lot of this just looks really good, top tier Gundam work here. Mikkel, he's writing in his journal. This is a recurring theme. We're going to get more into that later, but this is just kind of building some of that character development here. And another cool shot yet again. This is where, again, that sun is setting. Shiro has found his way back to the camp. Got his cockpit open, just kind of laying there. Just very cool, very well done. And then that fun little ending, which another nice little piece of music that you can kind of chill to, which is kind of another unique charm of 08 MS Team. And so that does it for the second episode. I think it's a really well done episode. We did meet a couple new characters. We're getting the development of some characters that we've already met, but we're also seeing a lot of world building around ground type battles here, where we had the ground type Gundams out in the jungle facing off against some Zakus. What it's like getting lost in the jungle, having used the hover tank and the sonar ability to kind of get more data about what is happening in the jungle. So I really think that's a very strong episode, and it really kind of helps cement the world building of the mech combat, as opposed to the first episode just centered more around the characters and some space elements in the beginning. So yeah, let me know what you think. Maybe what some of your favorite weaponry machinery was from this episode. I think that ground type Gundam is awesome. I think everyone loves that. I don't know if anyone dislikes it. It's certainly different from space, but it has a very, a real look to it. If a Gundam was real and happened to have to be operated on the ground, they did an excellent job with that. So anyway, yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll talk later. Hey Gundam fans, welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. Today we're continuing our look at 08 MS Team. We're on the third episode called The Time Limit on Trust. But before we get started, please subscribe if you haven't. And if you're interested in the giveaway, there's a link in the description for that. And as you're watching it, if you like it, give it a thumbs up. That'll help me out. So again, this episode, being the third episode, is called The Time Limit on Trust. And I think trust is a central theme in this episode, even though it seems strange how much Shiro is requiring people to trust him, yet he seems to be one of the nicest guys. It really has a lot to do with the mission. So with this, they found the Zeon factory that they have to locate within the jungle, right? And so the idea is the troops would head forward to the base, and then he was going to split off and then arrive about an hour later from the other side to help out. And so really the team is having to trust him to show up then. But along the way, he meets up with some guerrillas who don't trust him, even though he's saying how much he wants to help them and what he's willing to do. I mean, I guess you can see in that end where the guerrillas just don't like where war is going on, and it's going to be hard to trust either Zeon or the Federation that's just stepping and stomping all over everything. So you can kind of see the trust there. But it's just interesting, as with the previous episode, when Shiro got lost and they were hoping he would come back, and then he did come back and he was successful. You know, Shiro's a good guy from what we've seen with these episodes so far. Now it does open up with some pretty cool mobile suit battles right out the gate. We have, you know, the ground Gundam we all love. We have some Zaku 2s just in the jungle going back and forth. You know, and it's interesting because it's not like it's a direct continuation of the last episode, though in some ways it is. But also it starts off where they're already in the midst of battle. So, you know, just kind of cool for the world building here. And so they've located the base. There's pillboxes, and I kind of like how you can see the scale. So you see the Zaku 2 here, and you see the Zeon troops a little bit below that, and then the pillboxes. And so they've scoped out the base to get some intel, and this is where then Shiro's plan goes into play, where he wants the team at a specific time to then confront the base while he's going to have a surprise attack on the other side. Here's just a cool shot. They're actually cleaning the gun. You could see Eleanor and has actually one of those like brushes you use to clean a gun. I've done that in the past when I worked private security, so it's just kind of cool to see that aspect in this, where they're cleaning out the gun of a giant gun of a mobile suit. Just again, world building, because really what they're doing is they're talking about the plan that they're putting in place here. And so this is where Shiro's figuring out, you know, he's going to take the path around. They're saying be careful, there's some guerrillas in the area, and the idea is, you know, he calls them civilians, and he looks at them as, you know, someone they need to protect along the way, not really realizing how tough these guerrillas kind of are. And Sanders seems like such a nice guy. He's always getting called out for getting his team killed. Like, is that really his fault? But he's just a nice guy, and he's just wishing Shiro well on his mission. I kind of like how this plays out. He hears something outside his cockpit. He's getting his gun ready. And here we go. The guerrillas have ambushed. Now, you know, one interesting thing, too, is Kiki was standing in the trees watching the mobile suit walk by. And we can see specifically on Shiro's ground Gundam, on the shoulder, there's like a gray horizontal bar that goes across. It's like the specific for his, so you can like tell that it's his. But, you know, they were waiting to stop him, maybe to capture him. For what reason, I don't know, but to just get the mobile suit so they have more weaponry that they can use. And it gets kind of creepy here because they're, I guess, calling him out for seeing her when she was naked in the water. And I guess she's like complaining about it, and he was just saying, "Oh, you're nice to look at." And then she like, I guess, appreciated the kind sentiment there. But interesting that was kind of the focus of it. I guess they wanted to be maybe protective of her, but then they complain that they don't even get to see her like that. So a little creepy, but let's move on. Here's Mikhail writing in his journal again. This will be a bigger deal actually later on in this episode. Okay, and this is pretty cool because we're actually seeing that backpack open up and it has the weapons inside. So check this out. So on the gun, and this is just some cool stuff I like. It has kind of like an adapter, something you would see in computers when it comes to like a PCI slot or USB slot in the hand. And this is where the gun fits in. So that kind of helps with not only really just making it secure, but I guess energy, potentially some computer-controlled components like the AI. I remember in F91 when Seabook was getting into the Gundam and he needed to grab the gun. They're like, "Oh, just let the system do it." So I think that just lends to some of the AI controls that occur. But just kind of a cool, neat little world-building thing they're adding in where they're not explaining it. They're just showing it. All right, so they've arrived at the guerrillas' village, or the civilians' village. I guess they're really just being called guerrillas because they're just trying to protect themselves as these two factions are warring amongst them. And Shiro's a prisoner, and he's actually being brought to Kiki's dad. And so Here he is. That is Kiki's dad. And so, I was trying to get some background information on her dad, and I didn't really seem to come across much. But here I found something. It's pretty sad, and I'm glad they left it out of the anime, where in the novelization, that there's a darker change involving Kiki, where she's captured by Federation soldiers. They do some horrific stuff to her, and she commits suicide by biting her tongue. Ugh, that's pretty dark. And I understand that it's almost portraying the realities in war of what happens. It doesn't matter what side when people are put in these situations, and they're not really supervised, or just the darkest ends of humanity tend to emerge. I'm just glad they left it out, but that's pretty dark. And so he's trying to explain to the guerrillas that he needs to be let go. His team is waiting for them, and he does not want to get them killed. And that's really how he's trying to communicate that to them. It's like he can't let his friends die. And also, they talk about needing supplies. And he's like, we can help. I can give you medical supplies. I can give you whatever you want. And I guess that is a good thing. It's not that he's just trying to give him whatever he wants so he can go. It's more of, how he sees the Federation here is not only to stop Zeon, but to help the civilians. And again, even though the Federation is just as bad as the Zeon, we could tell even on both sides of the Principality of Zeon and the Federation that individual soldiers do want to do what's best for everybody. And so I'm glad that we're seeing that portrayed here. Also, I want to add, something I do like about this episode is the detail in his nose. I know that is a thing that bothers me for some reason, but I do want to say they've done a good job of actually detailing his nostril in this more than normal, and the shading of it actually gives the nose depth. So he looks more like a character here. And while on the right-hand side, the pupil takes up the whole eye and there's no white on the top and bottom, at least we're seeing some white on the bottom here. And there were some other shots where the pupil does that. Again, not a big deal to everyone. I didn't really grow up on anime, but I prefer when there's enough detail in something to where I can sort of relate to it as a human character and not a cartoon character. But now here's the team. They are kind of waiting, hoping that Commander's going to show up. Yeah, so they're going ahead and fighting. It's very cool just to get some more ground battles. We can see this sort of bridge, highway, street that's among the fighting. So you can see that within the civilian zones that this fighting is happening. And another thing, as Shiro was able to leave, the guerrillas agree that he can go and kind of help in the situation to see what they can get out of it. And Kiki's going along for the ride just to make sure he holds up his end of the bargain. And it's interesting how often that he refers to her as just a kid. Although she is 17, and I just bring that up because we see a lot of these, even Shiro himself, isn't he only 18, 19? He might be 20, actually, or 21. Actually, let's look that up. So he is 23, so I can see a 23-year-old seeing a 17-year-old as a kid. That's not too far apart in age, but there is some life experience and maturity changes there. Even if typically women happen to be a little more mature, I guess just how he's seeing her is as a kid, even though they still refer to seeing her in the nude and refer to her as a kid. It's a little odd, just maybe more of the cultural difference and just the way the legal system has been, like where I live in this part of the world when it comes to that. I think this is a cool shot because within these mobile suits, they have more of it's not that 360 cockpit view, and so you can kind of see the other ground Gundam over here on the other side. I don't know, just a cool shot. I love how goofy the Zeon soldier looks right here. And and another thing about this is I have noticed, other than Aina and her brother, they are really not focusing on individuals within Zeon. So there's almost these faceless pilots in these Zeon mobile suits Zaku's that are being killed, and so there's less of that attachment to the other side. in terms of just blasting the mobile suits, because really the main antagonists and that whole situation is almost a separate story for now until later. So in the meantime, we kind of just get these goofy looking Zeon guys. I mean, that guy looks cool, but you know, it's funny. It's just funny how this guy's drawn. That's cool, emerging from the water like that and just utter destruction. So that's cool. It's like a camera that was able to emerge underwater, attached to the Gundam, but where is it on the Gundam? So we see this antenna that sticks out. It looks like it's just part of the helmet, the headpiece on one side, which is very interesting, and it kind of sticks up and goes out of the water. I've never really seen that utilized anywhere else. It could have just been for the purpose of the story, but it's cool that it exists, because on one hand, how often would that be used? This is a ground Gundam, so I see that being more useful than in space, right? Because even if it's not underwater and the camera is sticking out, it could be just in the jungle, and maybe even standing up straight, it can go above the trees. I'm just curious how high that goes. Is there room for it to go high, or is it just, I don't know. I'm asking questions that may not matter, but I'm just interested in the technology here. That's pretty cool to see the gorillas here helping out. I got to say, some of this animation is a little janky. I'm kind of surprised. It does remind me of some things I would see in Double Zeta, but I think what they tend to do in this series is, you know, overall it's drawn well, but I think to maybe save cost when they have some scenes that require a lot, if it's side characters or side elements, that has less frames of animation. Okay, I don't know if you just saw that, but it was kind of interesting how there was a lot of mismatch with the facial animations of talking and what they're saying. And obviously, I understand that it's a translation, but usually they do a good job of filling that in. Again, I think this episode seems to have pulled back on animation frames, maybe to save money, but it is kind of jarring at times. Okay, so did you just hear that? That was the new type sound effect from when Joshua and Sanders were communicating with each other. Now, it was obviously over the radio, but when she said, "Hey, did you hear that?" And he's like, "Roger," like the new type sound. So that could just be a callback to the original series just to give you that Gundam feel. Or what if we're actually being told, the audience, we're being told that these are new types, and that's why they are successful in battle in a mobile suit. Curious what you guys think. Is Joshua and Sanders a new type? All right, so this is cool. We hear the sound effect now right after that for when there's an alarm, an attack, since the original Mobile Suit Gundam. And then this cool Zeon helicopter shows up. So this is called the Gunship Heli, and I am a huge fan of this type of stuff. Like, you know, it's cool that we get the mobile suits, but I like how we saw the DOP from the original Mobile Suit Gundam, but it's in this episode also. But then that has a counterpart that's a helicopter it was, you know, used during Vietnam quite a bit. Obviously that would be an Earth-based vehicle needing the atmosphere for the propellers to work, but it's really cool that they have something like this. So yeah, let's look at the specs here. You know, not too much. Vulcan gun missile launcher. It was really just in the MS team. So when it comes to ground battles, you know, I guess there hasn't been too much of this. It's saying that it's in the Rise from the Ashes game, which is pretty cool. I do have a video of that up. That was the game on the Dreamcast. They made a remake of it on PS3. But there is really not too much about this. I am very shocked. I mean, this is really cool. I don't know what else we would really need, but it'd be cool to see this utilized more often. All right, so they took out the Zeons, and they're now kind of hanging out at the base because all the civilians are there. Now, all the civilians seem to be guerrilla-like in terms of the aggression and what they're trying to do. I don't know how many like innocent I don't know if that's the right term to use. Innocent civilians are among them in here. Like, that's weird. I mean, really, they're just taking their stuff. And so Shiro says, we have a deal. Anything they take, we can reorder. But they stole Mikhail's journal that he was writing in to his girlfriend. And it had nudie pictures, and they're joking about that. So that's pretty horrible. And they're taking it, and Commander's just like, anything they take, we can reorder. You can't reorder that. It's a little weird to me. Joshua's just saying, hey, you can call me Karen. And then Kiki's running up to him, I guess, kind of happy. I guess Kiki's just coming around to him because realizing that Shura really is this nice guy that really cares, except when it comes to Mikhail's journal, letting that get stolen. But anyway, it's just kind of cool now. He's kind of the ladies' man, I guess. Now they're trying to show off because really Aina is the one that he is the main connection here in this story, but he's amongst these others. And that is it for this episode. No time limit on trust. I guess really the idea is the time it takes Shiro to get to his team to help them out despite being captured by the guerrillas and actually gaining trust from the guerrillas, even though at the end I thought it was pretty aggressive with them really just taking everything. And even the diary, I can understand if you're giving them supplies, food, medical equipment, but the rest of it was a little silly. Even it could be that was just trying to be a humorous joke, but it's just the tone didn't seem to work. Just kind of odd there. But I mean, really, that's nitpicking because really what's cool about this episode is the type of Gundam tactical battles that were occurring. We had the use of the water. We also had that camera that stuck out. We saw the Zeon helicopter that showed up out of nowhere. And apparently that's not in a lot of stuff. And then even the guerrilla warfare, they were helping take out the Zaku's. They had their own weapons. They had grenades. So all in all, there was a lot of cool world building when it came to like the battle tactics of mobile suits on the ground. So that's what's very cool about this. So anyway, hope you liked it. Please comment about this. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and we'll talk later. Hey, Gundam fans, welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. For this video, we're continuing our look at 8th MS Team, and this episode is called The Demon Overhead, and I guess it's pretty on point for what happens in this episode. But before we get started, if you haven't, please subscribe, and give this a like if as you're watching it, you think it's pretty cool, because that helps me out. But yeah. Let's get going. So the demon overhead, there's a reason it's called that, and that has to do with something that is potentially a demon that is overhead, that being the Oxalis or asparagus. Really depends on what spelling you look at, but again, it has to do with translation. No, not really asparagus, but it looks like that when I look at it sometimes. Well, we'll see the differences even on the Gundam Wiki. Sometimes it's spelled with an L or an R, but we've seen that before with a lot of Gundam translations. It has to do with the Japanese versus the English translation, the R and the L being similar and interchangeable. And what's really cool about this episode is we're now diving deeper into some of the main characters from the side of Zeon, like Aina and her brother. We're introduced to another character who is an admiral. Whereas most of the series so far, while it's shown Aina just a bit, it's really been focused on mainly the guerrillas and the Federation, and the Zeons have kind of taken a backseat. So we have these two DOPs that are dropping the Oxalis in the Earth's atmosphere. This is for a test flight. Aina is the pilot in it right now because she's testing it for her brother. And apparently Degwan Zabi approved of this project. So that's kind of another neat connection there. Here we see Iginius. He's overlooking this project, having his sister piloting it. Now, I'm kind of curious, something I don't remember if this is part of the story, we'll find out later. Is it that she's a new type? Is he a new type? Is he using her because of her abilities? Or is it just that they're siblings and so he wants her to be a part of this? Who knows? Let's see if they explore that a little more. I've never really brought it up, but that music they play when they're showing what I assume is the title of the episode is pretty cool. It kind of fits with the theme. It gets you pumped up for what's coming up next. Okay, so here we get into some deeper story and character development for Sanders. The 7th MS team pulls up, calls him out as the Reaper because everyone dies that he works with. It's very interesting because if I do recall, MS Igloo touched on this very same subject when someone was considered a Reaper. People they were with would die all the time. But the differences in MS Igloo would then show a literal being. I was about to say physical, but it's like a ghost, but it would show a literal being. And it was that female pilot, perhaps, or uniformed individual that I guess was at play, or is what everyone was seeing in their mind. But then it's like, well, isn't that more of a new type thing? So does that mean Sanders is a new type, but then we have to take into account, does that mean there is a Lady of Death around him? Now, we don't see that at all in this. In fact, it's not even like this is a consistent theme within multiple characters in the UC universe. It just happens to be an MS Igloo, that last season of 3 episodes where they really touched on that a whole lot. So regardless, this is the same type of story, but we're not seeing that ghost there. Is that where they got the idea? I don't know. For some reason, it still bugs me that they went so specific to showing a spirit that multiple people see, which is very related to the new type phenomenon, but they never said if that's what it is. And is Sanders a new type? Between him and Joshua in the previous episode, the little new type sound chimed in when they were communicating to each other. So, but anyway, he was getting tired of people calling him out, because obviously you don't want to be called out for something like that. He went in, beat them up. Mikkel was kind of scared, jumped on his bike, went to get the commander. The commander comes in and actually helps. He just runs right in and starts beating on them too. So again, we're seeing Shiro is quite the hero. Oh, and before that quick shot, we see some of those GMs that are exclusive to 8th MS Team cartoon look very, very cool. All right, and that is the RGM-79G GM ground type. Let's see. Yeah, this first appears in 8th MS Team. Let's see any other information about it. First seen in August of 0079, last seen 0083. Armaments, let's see, XBSA GO3 beam saber, so a specific type of beam saber, a 100mm machine gun, 90mm bullpup machine gun, 180mm cannon, a beam rifle, missile launcher, rocket launcher. So just, yeah, rail cannon, it just goes on and on. Just this thing has so many weapons, but I think it depends on the setup, how they are equipped when they go out into battle, which shows how versatile they are. So it's really cool. I mean, look at that, a net gun, different types of shields. So yeah, I guess there's different setups for them, very versatile. Let's see, and then for the history, in order to prevent the expansion of Zeon's power, the GM ground type was quickly deployed in strategically important Southeast Asia. It was also deployed on a priority basis to special forces for the purpose of collecting data on actual battles with MS. Toward the end of the war, it was also deployed in Operation Odessa, which became the stage for a large-scale battle on the ground. So, yeah, very cool. Just a very cool unit altogether. And then the Lieutenant Colonel Kojima shows up to see what 7th and 8th team are doing, because they're fighting. And Shiro just says, hey, it was just a friendly little competitive match here. And so luckily they got out of that. But then something came up. There seemed to be something going on nearby that may be Zeon related. And that has to do with that test flight. And Ginius giving a grand speech in normal Zeon fashion. We got Degwin Zombie right behind him. I'm just talking about the test flight and how it was successful. And, you know, what's a Gundam UC story without a regal ball of some kind? And that's where Ginius is talking to others, maybe about the successful test flight, and we see Aina show up. And man, she looks pretty cute, despite missing nostrils. And that's Norris Packard behind her. I think I've heard his name come up more than once. And then Admiral Yuri Kelleran shows up. He seems to be kind of this annoying loudmouth, but he's an admiral, and I think that makes him lead over Ginius. I'm not too sure, but they do have some history. He starts hitting on Aina and talking about how he remembers her from when she was younger. But we can kind of see how we have this other antagonist for the antagonist. Kind of interesting there. All right, back at the 8th MS team, they're actually out in the woods, camping, kind of cooking a meal. But then Sanders says he wishes to resign. He wants to be moved somewhere else. It's really getting to him when people are calling him out, calling him the Reaper, you know, for his teammates always dying in battle. And while some are scared of that, Shiro does not even care, does not even worry about it, and is telling Sanders, no, you are staying with us. You're a good soldier. You can work with us. Again, just showing how nice Shiro is. It's like, is there anything wrong with this guy? And then Karen comes along and kicks Sanders in the balls. And then I guess she's just mad at him for wanting to be a coward like that, and even calling him out like, how could you think you're the reason that all that's happening. And I guess that kind of makes sense. All right, so Ina's testing again, but we can see there is an alert going off, so there is something wrong with the Aspilus right now, so that may cause it to run into an issue. Even where they're testing it, it's right where the 8th MS team is. And so it's kind of interesting to see right there that Ginius is kind of just blowing that off, like it's not a big deal, yet that's his sister in this. So I do think this is kind of an interesting dynamic, if he really truly does care for his sister, or it's really just about him testing his experimental machine here. So yeah, they're moving out because they're hearing something that's going on, and you can see Sanders is nervous. So really this episode, when it comes to the Federation side, seems to be focused on Sanders getting over that perception he has as being the Reaper. And Mikhail getting made fun of again for writing in his journal, but you know what? You keep at it, man. Although, in this scene, apparently he's writing his will. So that's, again, kind of playing off of Sanders' storyline here, where Mikhail was a little more scared about the outcome of that, of possibly dying by being alongside Sanders. Yeah, and then even the Admiral's telling him, yeah, you know, abort, have Ina get out. So the antagonist of the antagonist seems like, on one hand, he has kind of a good side to him. I don't know, it's kind of interesting. All right, some cool mobile suit on mobile suit action. All right, so the team is planning for an ambush. The hover tank is picking up some enemy unit is en route. And they even discuss how with the Minovsky particle dispersal, it's really hard to pick up on what's going on. But yeah, we're about to see. Oh, that's very animated. Here we go. Sick look at this. The music looks good. The framing of the shot is awesome. Let's dive into what this thing is. So, the Aspilus, or asparagus. No, it's the Opsilus. I think there's multiple ways it can be pronounced. But yeah, this is version 1. So, yeah, this is approved by Degwin Zabi and led by Ginius Sahalin, so Ina's brother. Yeah, taking a look at it here, it looks very cool. That's a very small picture, isn't it? But I love how it has that little Zaku head in there. I mean, that just tops it off, right? So what's interesting is this is the project's first prototype, and its development focus was the Minovsky craft system. As such, it was unarmed, and the megaparticle cannon at its center was a dummy. However, it was capable of attacking by increasing the output of its Minovsky craft to generate a shockwave. So that's interesting. And so really not too much on this. I think we're going to start getting more information about this prototype system once we get to the Opsilus 2 and 3. And so Karen was knocked back by the Opsilus, but Sanders comes in to save her. Cool use of the smoke. And really cool to see the gun shoot a dop. Really cool shot here. Awesome. Yeah, and it forced it to retreat. The Opsilus had to retreat because, you know, it doesn't really have many weapons other than how it can manipulate its Minovsky system. But the mobile suits were able to do enough, yeah, to get it to retreat. And Eleanor and Mikhail, they're very happy that they didn't die. Their hover tank did kind of get knocked over, probably having to do with that Minovsky propulsion shockwave that the Opsilus can use. And really cool ending shot here. The team is happy. Sanders, it even ends with him very happy. Karen, Joshua was trying to tell Sanders that, you know, hey, you did a good job. No one died. And so I think that had a really cool, happy ending. So that was episode 4, The Demon Overhead. I think it's a pretty neat episode because we got to dive deeper into Ina, her relationship with her brother, and some other Xeon antagonist. But at the same time, we got to see Sanders' character development and the dynamic between all the characters based on that. Karen, Joshua, she wasn't really scared about it at all. Mikhail was. He was worried about dying. But Shiro, you know, was still able to do his job as commander and lead the team, I guess, to defend against the Obsolus, even though it didn't really have any weaponry, they now know what the Zeon troops in the area are trying to do, and now they can be better equipped for any future endeavors out there. So everyone, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Please comment and let me know what you like about the episode. Anyway, welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. For this episode, we're continuing our look at 8th MS Team with the 5th episode called The Broken Order. So what does that mean exactly? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out as we watch it. And this is a very interesting episode. It doesn't focus on the Federation side as much as you'd think in terms of Shiro. In fact, it more focuses on Elidor and Mikkel. We'll kind of get into that here. But also it focuses a lot more on the Zeon side, and it's very interesting. I would say this is almost a filler episode. If this was a longer series, it's kind of short. But yeah, let's get into it. All right, and the episode starts where we have Jidan, Eleanor, Mikkel just kind of goofing off. In fact, it is pretty goofy. The tone is different. This is no different than the tonal shifts that we see in Double Zeta Gundam. Again, my belief is because we are seeing a sub with Double Zeta and not a dub. It's really hard to connect with the characters in terms of the English speakers. I'd really love to talk with some fluent Japanese speakers that grew up with Double Zeta and have their take on it. But this part is goofy, and it's not my thing. But hey, it's cool. We get some character development. Jidan talks about a girl from a village nearby that prepares his food. Elidor gets a letter that has something to do with his music career, a song that I guess is going to be played, going to be produced, and he's so happy about it, excited about it. He wants to go off and, I guess, party, even though they're supposed to be stationed where they're at. That's their orders. But he wants to go off and party. And even Mikkel's like, no, I am not going. We can't go against the captain's orders or the commander's orders. And he just brings up, hey, but I'm going to be making a lot of money. Wouldn't you like that? And so Mikkel's like, oh, okay. And he goes off with him. And so this is where the fun starts. Again, it's goofy. It's the tonal shift people complain about in Double Zeta Gundam, which to me is not really as often as it seems. Again, it's just mainly at the beginning of Double Zeta Gundam, and we're seeing a sub, not a dub. I think that's where it really comes from. And so Elidor and Mikkel arrive at this village. It's like a little town. It's got shops, bars, whatever. But we can see there's already a Zeon occupation here. It's part of Zeon's plans out in this area where they have that experimental unit that they're working on, and they're kind of moving around trying to make sure that anyone that's part of this village hasn't got away, maybe to give information back to the Federation. Change in tone from the beginning goofiness, we see a really cool look at Zeon machinery here in action. We've got a Zaku foot. We've got some of their like crane or whatever trucking vehicles back there, and the Obsolus in the background. Looks very cool. And it didn't take long. Elidor and Mikkel get caught by the Zeon, so let's see what happens. So Norse and Aina are briefed on the fact that some Federation soldiers were caught, and then he speaks about having to quickly repair the Obsolus because they want to be able to get out of there and increase security. So back at the base, 8th MS Team. They don't know where Mikkel and Elidor are, so I guess they have to go out and find them. We're seeing some of what the Principality of Zeon are capable of, because they're in this village where there are civilians around, and they're pretty violent, pretty brutal about it. Even someone questions how they are treating the civilians here. So this episode gives a lot more information about the Zeon side of things, brings more faces and names to the characters. That way, there's more of that contrast. It more builds the development of what the Zeons are capable of doing. And even Aina, she's really the main, in a way, the main character for the bad guys. She is questioning what's going on, the way the Zeons are treating these people. What's really interesting about that, too, is how we're seeing her character arc go. She has the sympathy for Shiro after she meets him. She's kind of questioning what her brother's doing, and you kind of question how her brother is treating her. And so now they're being interrogated, and they kind of lie of where they're from, but then also they explain the reasons for being there is they want to defect. Now, it was pretty interesting is the next scene when they're holed up, Mikkel is asking Elidor, why did you say that? Why are we defecting? But the idea is he wants to save time. Otherwise, they might have been executed right away. So kind of a smart move on Elidor's part. So we'll see how that pans out. And it so happens the friend Jadam mentioned earlier that has a lunch that I guess she makes. She has some food for these guys in here. So I guess kind of a nice outcome of this. Just someone that's a villager, a civilian, I should say, that is, being ordered by Zeons to, I guess, take care of their prisoners. It's funny, Nora's seeing this long pause that he looks back at her after saying good evening. Maybe she's showing a bit of humanity in him. Maybe he was charmed by just her politeness in the situation. So the 8th MS team are still looking for Elidor and Mikkel. They're kind of scanning the area, and they come across the heat signature, which is pretty cool, showing it in this way, and where they can kind of zoom in and kind of see the Zeon weaponry here. Karen ambushes a motorcyclist with a Zeon helmet, to try to get what information they can to get into town. It just happens to be Kiki, though, so I guess no problems there. And it goes on for quite a while. Elidor, Mikkel, just mad at each other because of the situation they're in, taking it out on each other. Zeon guard busts in with the gun, asking them to stop. And amidst the fighting, the Zeon soldier trying to stop them, they accidentally knock the soldier out, see the front door open, or the door open to their cell, or where they were locked, and they just escape. Cool shot here. Obsolet's taken off. They actually finished the repairs. So really at this point, the Zeon soldiers can disperse, can scatter, probably lessen the security. Okay, we do get some cool mobile suit on mobile suit action here. But what's going on is they're kind of firing around the base, the Federation is. They kind of, I guess, scatter the Zeon soldiers even more to kind of confuse them, just so they're not sure of their numbers. So Elidor and Mikkel see a construction tank and decide to jump into it. So we get some glimpses, not a lot of good full-frame glimpses, but of this specific Zeon tank that's being used. And let's look at that. So here we go, MS-06V Zaku tank, according to the Gundam Wiki, but it also does list down here that it's actually based off an MS-05 Zaku tank. So in the Gundam Wiki, we're actually seeing the picture of this. It has like the Zaku 1 head here going on. And I guess there's different variations here, which are pretty fun and interesting. Just this has the construction arms on it and kind of this like bulldozer front. So really, it was used in, I guess, the establishment of that base that was at the village, and maybe also for the repairs, just moving around their equipment wherever they need to go. But we also get a look at the armored vehicle. Let's see. It looks like it is known as the PVN-44-1 Weasel. I guess here's a little shot of it. An 8th MS team, MS Igloo. Basic armored vehicle. It has a 37mm machine gun, Mazura MG74S machine gun, quadruple missile launcher, triple smoke discharger. So just another cool weapon, an element to add to the Zeon's repertoire when they're on Earth, these land-based battles. All right, and after Elidor in the tank takes out a Zaku because he wants to make sure he hears his song being published, he wakes up screaming because now we see the team has found him. We see Maria from the village, she's there too, and they're just kind of patching him up. That's kind of sweet. We see Judan, Maria from the village, what was talked about before. I guess they have a thing for each other. Now, like a commander should, Shiro does get on Mikkel for abandoning his post, causing all this havoc. And he immediately apologizes and says he knows he shouldn't have done it. But then Shiro comes around and says, don't worry, take the day off. Really showing just how nice and generous the commander is. Sometimes you wonder if that's a good or bad thing in the midst of war, life or death. But Shiro's a good guy. Kind of awkward. Kind of a cool shot here near the end. Elidor's on the back of a truck being taken to, I guess, a medical facility for further treatment. And he's just looking out and he sees Karen in front of her ground Gundam. And, kind of again further showcasing that character development between the two. And that is it. That's the 5th episode, called The Broken Order. I'm assuming that has to do with they had orders and they broke it. This episode is just okay. We get some character development, but in general, it's the tonal shift people complain about with Double Zeta Gundam. I'm just gonna say that for as much praise as 8th MS team gets, this is just one of those instances where I'm like, well, this is an example of the things I don't like about this series, and it's smaller. Well, Double Zeta spans a long time. We get a lot of mobile suit battles. We get a lot of different mobile suits. We get a lot of Camille Badan. And while this is good, it's just shorter. So when you have these filler episodes that are a bit goofy, I just got to question it. But hey, it's not bad. All right, so guys, let me know what you think in the comments below about this episode, or about the Zaku tank or the armored vehicle. Curious what you think, and subscribe if you haven't. And if this was a cool video, like it too. That helps me out. So thanks for watching. Hey Gundam fans, welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. For this video, we're continuing our look at 8th MS team. We're actually on the 6th episode, Battle Line in the Burning Sand. Kind of curious what that means. It almost seems literal because there is a line in the sand due to a battle that occurred, and they're in sand that's very hot. I don't know if it's supposed to be literal like that, or we can kind of get some metaphor out of that. I don't know. Let's see what happens. And before we get started, if you haven't, please subscribe. Check out the links in the description below. There's a Patreon going on. We'll have a movie night for some supporters and stuff like that, so it's pretty cool. All right, so, to get started, the last episode I wasn't too crazy about. It was more of a filler episode and it was kind of goofy. But, that's fine. We can move on. This next episode is actually pretty cool. I feel like it does a lot of world building, not just in terms of the factions and how they operate, but also of mobile suits and how they operate, but integrating character development in a way. Makes you feel sorry for Mikkel, really. It seems like he's always messing up in some way, but yeah, let's take a look at it. All right, so Kiki has an informant giving her some information about seeing an object fall from the sky, doing its test stuff, and it's the Obsolus. After the team coming across it a couple episodes ago, they're now wanting to investigate this and see if they can find where this testing center, if that's what it is, could be. At this point, even the Zeon knows that the Fetties are onto them, so they are trying to scramble. But yeah, so Kiki was able to get some information, so yeah, the 8th MS team can roll out and try to see what they can find. All right, so yeah, like I said, poor Mikkel, right? So this focuses more on his character development that we've been introduced to since the first episode. He's writing these letters, and he's just kind of like this hopeless romantic that is kind of, he gets crap for this stuff, but it is kind of funny, and it's kind of gotten in the way of the mission. The last episode, it was a little different. It was Elidor that heard that, or he got a letter that his song could be put on the radio, so he wanted to go party, and he was, even though Mikkel didn't want to go out there with him and leave his post, Elidor talked him into that, and so he did leave. And he even got it from his commander by the end of the episode, telling him, you cannot just leave your post. And he apologized. He seemed sincere. But we can see where his mind is at. He doesn't have a lot of focus, so we kind of get into that here a little later. And this is where things will occur in this episode, but based on Mikkel, his diary, his little letters, the notes that he's writing between him and his girl, Phoebe. All right, so pretty cool. We see in this scene that little antenna that's popping up out of the top of the ground Gundam's head. We actually saw that in the previous episode where the ground Gundam was underwater and it had that little antenna pop out. Just kind of a neat, cool little world-building thing of the mobile suits. Also, you'll notice there's some high contrast. Even though we're seeing like the greenery here and the grass and the hills, there's emphasis on them being out in the desert because they're trying to see if they can come across this Obsolus again, get more information. And they bring up the fact that they're in this desert heat. And I think that holds true with how this episode has been drawn and painted, colored, where we're seeing that real high contrast. You're almost looking like you're turning up the brightness on your screen. All right, it's interesting here. I love how, there's a situation where Shiro's Gundam has some issues with the left foot, and I kind of like how when they have the camera, not really camera, But the scene where you're seeing the feet and it's kind of zoomed in, you can see the extra detail. So that's one cool thing about this episode is the detail that we're seeing about the ground Gundam, and there is more. Here's a look at that contrast I was talking about. It's almost like these things are pure white. Look at the blues. Look at how white that is. You can't even tell if something is supposed to be yellow. So again, it's really building on the idea that they're out in this desert heat. All right, and they're investigating the site here. It looks like a canyon of some kind, and even looked like there was a crater, but also that there looks like there's like a scorch mark or burn line throughout there, and they're trying to figure out what it is.
I don't read any radiation.
Good.
You know, one crazy thing about it is Karen is being lifted down on this wire, and it's really just her foot and her hand holding onto it. You would think they would have her fastened to something so she doesn't fall. That could be me just nitpicking, but yeah, they kind of make that look a little scary. Okay, so kind of cool view here. We're seeing Mikkel have used this giant wrench, and he's actually pulling off some giant bolts off the side of the ground Gundam's foot. I think it's really cool to see this level of detail when it comes to them servicing these units when they're out on the field. Kind of, again, it fleshes out that the world building of utilizing a mobile suit in battle. Kind of helps kind of give a real world feeling, if that could even be possible. Okay, so check that out. They lift that up. So very cool to see that, where they use the hand to kind of, because I'm thinking to myself, when they need some machinery, if they're not in a hangar bay, in order to do, I don't know, try to manipulate some of the technology. Well, yeah, they were able to use the hand to kind of lift up the top of that boot, so then they could do repairs in there. And they're going to even show more. Now, what's also really cool is seeing these wires and cabling come out. I've watched it before. I didn't really pay attention what it's for. It could be for like diagnostics or something like that, where they're able to plug it in to kind of get a read on certain things. All right, and so between Mikkel and Shiro right now, they're actually troubleshooting, and we can see the pistons that were blocked by that guard and the machinery, and they're going to, get in there even more. And it's just going back to Karen and Sanders. They're actually trying to get some information from seeing this line in the sand. And so you can kind of see within this canyon where that line went, and she was able to determine it was a glass, meaning some sort of beam weapon actually did this. It was able to heat up the rock in the sand and create this glass. Very cool. Mikkel is inside between the pistons of the foot, and he's got what looks like a filter, and he's kind of messing with it. So I just heard him, he called it an M18 filter. There's some world building for you. That's a trivia question. They use an M18 filter in the foot of the Gundam, and he was talking about how it was clogged with sand, which makes sense because of where they are, but I kind of like that establishment of the deterioration that goes on, the maintenance that's required with using these mobile suits. And Shiro's checking out what they're seeing, and he, what Sanders and Karen are seeing to really determine, this could be some testing ground for this. Uh-oh, and here's Kiki. Let's see what happens. Now, what's going on here is she likes that she's helping Shiro. Shiro appreciates it. But it is time for Shiro to get to work. It's no place for a civilian. He's asking her to please leave. He doesn't want to be responsible if anything happens, but she doesn't want to. She has fallen for him. He has played hard to get since that kind of little mishap that happened earlier where he, saw her taking a bath or a swim in the lake, and at first she was mad, but he played it off like a gentleman, and he doesn't seem to be interested. He's not being flirtatious. He's not kind of acting that way. He's doing his job, and that's what is a cool thing about Shiro. Even all the way through to this episode, he is a good commander. And even when you're in battles like this, or when you're in the midst of conflict, he's not really letting someone like Kiki get to him, or not. Okay, so we're going to get to something here, because now Shiro's going in there to take a look, right, while Mikkel kind of in the cockpit's kind of performing some of the functions to help get this going. So there we go. Mikkel's in the cockpit. He's pulling out a letter. Okay, very cool to see, like, you see Mikkel push on a pedal. There's a few pedals there, and he pushed on one, and that's supposed to initiate the movement of the leg. And we see specifically gears inside on one side of the foot, and they start moving. So we're kind of getting an idea of, while it's not fully explained, it's like how these mobile suits work and how the functions function. But he gets his shirt caught into it, okay? And this becomes an issue. So what happened was, luckily, Kiki was around, because Mikkel was so I don't know, he was daydreaming about the letter with his girlfriend, that he wasn't paying attention to Shiro. So Kiki goes up to the cockpit, helps stop it so nothing happens to Shiro. But I just feel bad for Mikhail because it's like second episode in a row where he is failing at his duties, getting people in trouble, potentially hurt. What we get right here is pretty cool because it's actually showing a cool bird's eye view of the ground Gundam being prepared. I kind of like how you're seeing in the joints where you can kind of see the wrinkle of some sort of mesh that goes over it. I think there's a certain name for it. And you see this in Thunderbolt. I think the Alex Gundam also has that. But it's just kind of cool. Again, it shows how 8th MS Team, not only is it ground-based to make it realistic, but it really adds a lot of seeing how that functionality works. So that's interesting. So Sanders just ordered Mikhail to erase his tracks, which is kind of a cool, again, world-building idea here, where they're doing this investigation on a supposed test site of the Zeon, but they have to erase their tracks so the Zeon can't track them back. Kind of cool seeing the ground Gundam backpack in action here. Again, just a great shot here. This is a great example episode to use. We can see kind of the joint look there that I was describing earlier, and we see Shiro. He has some tools kind of hooked up to it, just really showing and showcasing the technology that's used. He's even really reflecting on the fact that he's so obsessed with the letter that he's not focusing on the mission. So pretty cool. Kind of, they're using a drone right now for testing. They're trying to use the information they've collected in order to find out a way that they could engage the Obsolescence if they have to. Again, Mikhail on the certain mission, he gets distracted. Let's see what happens. And they're purposely showing the letter in the foreground, even though it's blurred. And what happens is you see it fall, and then he just looks over to it. Again, he's distracted, and he causes the drone to just crash. And so he just messes up their training mission. Okay, and then Kiki just shows up again. You know, it's kind of annoying because Shiro had already asked for her not to tag along because he doesn't want to be responsible for anything to happen. And again, someone that's just not using the training that they are for this specific scenario might get in the way. Karen is overhearing their conversation, and I guess she sees that his shirt is ripped from earlier, and says that she can fix it for him. And so over the intercom, you just hear her say, "Take off your shirt, take off your shirt." And he's like, no. And he goes, "Okay, fine." And it sounds odd, sounds awkward, even though she has good intentions, and he has good intentions. But yeah, I guess even Karen sees how Kiki is just not the right time for her to be around. Here's a nice detailed world-building look of a can of some sort of beverage and then a sandwich of some kind. We see some lettuce, tomato, the paper that it was wrapped in. Again, some good world-building. And I kind of like this again. So there's a little hole in the ground. There's a cup that's put there. Sanders put some sort of sheet or film, mesh, something over it with a rock in the center to kind of weigh it down. That way, overnight, over time, the moisture that builds up will fall there and fall into the cup, getting them some water. Again, some good world building. Again, the fact that we're seeing this high contrast here, we're seeing how bright the artwork is because it's supposed to show really how hot it is, and so water's necessary. So again, this episode is just full of world building while integrating the character development. Can't say that enough. But it's interesting that we get this shot, the handle of the controls here, and we see the watch Shiro got from Aina. So while Shiro is leading by example, Mikhail does pick up on the fact that he carries his watch around. So it gets annoying again with Kiki, again kind of butting in. She runs off with Mikhail's letter, right? And he's upset about it, and she starts reading it and laughing, and then slows down because in the letter, you know, the girl of Mikhail, Bibi, is saying that maybe they shouldn't be talking to each other right now because it's a lot to go through knowing that the war is keeping them apart, and it's really hard to think about. And he's out in this mission that's kind of out in the middle of nowhere where he can't have a letter sent off, and so he's then feeling that feeling of being scared of not being able to communicate with her, and he could lose her. So you got to think when it comes to the human element, a lot of times the idea of love, kind of takes over a lot of your responsibilities or what you're supposed to be able to do. So he has this conflict of, the responsibility of being in war and this love interest he has and the fact that he could lose her. So this is a big character moment. Luckily, I mean, Shiro's getting on Kiki again because he even brings it up. She's always butting into things. They're on a mission right here. They can't get distractions. Now, pretty interesting turn of events. Sanders is asking Mikkel to pilot his mobile suit. That could kind of help him be distracted and maybe feel a sense of responsibility in a way. So kind of a callback, Sanders is then giving her water when he was just originally talking about how precious it is, and that's why he put together that little water trap to get the water. But I guess he's seeing how she feels because she was just yelled at by Shiro, and she's even questioning why she's feeling the way she is. So now we're getting back and we're seeing the emotions that are driving Mikkel amidst being part of this battle, and the emotions that are driving Kiki, and she's trying to figure out, what that is. And the emotions that are driving Shiro, and he's holding on to that watch, and he's even thinking about it. So let's see, this is called Battle Line in the Burning Sand, and I still don't really get what that could mean other than that literal battle line, the glass from the beam blast in the sand that's burning because it's hot, and as we see with the contrast of the coloring in this, it's supposed to be, a hot area. So I don't know, what do you guys think? So what's interesting here is they're calling out that the song that's playing on the radio overhead while everyone is, dwelling in their emotions, is Elidor's song, which we haven't seen yet in this episode. And so that's just another character building element, a callback again from a previous episode. And it was requested by Elidor himself while he was in hospital, which we saw from the last episode after his injuries. So very cool little callback there. Kind of bring the team together even if they are apart and not feeling the best. Oh, here we go. I love that little Zaku head on there. Check out the gun on that. Let's see what it does. But yeah, the Obsolus has appeared. They call that out over the radio. So yeah, let's see what happens. Yeah, that was cool. We saw that. The kind of prone position shooting the beam rifle. Okay, great shot there. Look at that. And we see the Obsolus Zaku head right in front of Mikkel's mobile suit. Okay, this is getting cool. And you hear the music too. It's very orchestral. It really works nicely here. So she's saying, "Let go, you're gonna kill both of us," says Shiro in his mobile suit on the Obsolus that Aina's driving, and he recognizes that voice. And by the surprised look on her face, she recognizes him. Okay, well, what an episode. So it ended where, Shiro and the Obsolus, got lost. The 8th MS team, who's left of them, can't find them anywhere. A lot of cool action at the end with great music to go along with it. So I wonder if you guys caught on that too. But yeah, I gotta say, this was a really good episode. It was really deep in the character development. People were reflecting on actions of others that were based on emotion, and yeah, reflecting again, looking at how they see their own emotions at a time like this and what they think about it. At a time where they are trying to find the Obsolus or find this monster, this weaponry, and then, yeah, it does show up. And they were prepared, despite, some of the issues between Kiki and Mikkel and all that. They were able to kind of possibly fend it off, but now Shiro's lost, so it'd be interesting to see what happens in the next episode. Well, hey, Gundam fans, welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. For this video, we're continuing our look at 8th MS Team. We're actually on episode 7, Reunion, and it picks right off where Shiro and Aina kind of meet again. But before we get started, if you haven't, please subscribe. And as you're watching the video, if you think it's cool, give it a like. That helps me out. Now, last we left off on the previous episode, the 8th MS Team was at that canyon in the desert where they were kind of looking around to see where the Obsolus could possibly be. And then out of nowhere, the Obsolus 2 appears. There's a little skirmish going on, and as it is about to take off, Shiro Amada, in his Gundam ground type unit, jumps onto it, the Obsolus, as it takes off in an attempt to stop it from leaving so they can stop it for good. And then as the pilot of the Obsolus speaks, Shiro recognizes the voice, and the episode ends. And we pick right up there from where we left off, kind of. Let's take a look. We're actually picking up where we're seeing Yuri on the Zeon side, who we haven't seen in a while. And he has his unit out in Odessa. And they're really at the point in the war where Mikuve and everyone kind of lost, when it comes to the Zeons and that era of Earth, where the mining areas are. And so what's going on is Zeon is, getting out of there. But to them, to Yuri, the war's not over. It'll just continue on in space. But I guess it's just kind of a cool, quick little look at another part of the 1 Year War during the time of the 8th MS team to kind of see where we're at. But also, the character of Yuri also continues on in this. Really cool shot here, seeing the tank, with Type 61 tank, and seeing the two ground GMs. Now, this may have been something obvious I totally missed, but what is the weapon we're seeing here? Is this just a mega beam particle cannon they're firing off? Is it from something specific? I guess really was a last-ditch effort by Zeon to do some attacks before they were to take off. Because really what happens, Yuri gets aboard a cool-looking Zeon C ship and takes off. Looks like a complete Chad here. I mean, he's like standing there sleeveless, collar up, looking like a badass. He's kind of got that Wolverine hair going on. And he just has a lady to throw a jacket on him. Now, here's another cool one I haven't seen much of, and I was trying to search around for this. Anyone know what it's called? Really, it's just a sea-based ship of Zeons that they're using. It kind of has that similar look to the DOP or the other type of ships they have. But yeah, if anyone has any information, yeah, please share. Okay, so now we're back at where it left off from the previous episode. Shiro and Aina, they realize that they have reunited, hence the name of the episode, Reunion. They've taken off, and they're lost to the rest of the team, not only 8th MS team, but the Zeons that are watching. Guineas, her brother, assumes that she's fine because they get a distress signal, but they can detect that it is from the Federation, and they're actually going to use that to go and scout the area. Really a cool shot here. I kind of like this moment that is occurring, how they're realizing who they are, that they finally kind of reunited and probably didn't intend to. And this is actually littered with a bunch of cool shots. And we get a lot of close-up looks here of the machinery and how the things look. We kind of see, and I want to talk about this more later, but the hand of the ground Gundam itself, it looks like it has some sort of sleeve that covers the hand itself so you don't see the joints. I wasn't too familiar with that aspect of it, unless that's just how they decided to draw it. But looks pretty cool. But anyway, there's kind of an issue with the Obsolescence 2. Now, it uses the Minovsky flight system, but also has the beam cannon in tow. And because it has those two uses of energy output, it kind of causes a strain on the system, and it's hard for it to stay, in flight. So they're having to land. Now, it's unable to, as I said, take off or stay level. And it probably has to do with the fact that a mobile suit is hanging on to one side of it. So Shiro actually has to use his thrusters to kind of help with the landing. Now, as they're landing, we kind of see now they're in a snow area, mountainous area. I was trying to look up and research where they could possibly be. The Himalayas is kind of like the first guess, just because it's a little more north. But in my opinion, that seems super north. I did some research of some areas in the vicinity of northern Southeast Asia, almost like southwest China, where there could be mountainous areas that snow does occur. So it really could be anywhere there. The Himalayas seem like that would be super far away from where they were at, but maybe just for the story's sake, that's where it is. And as it lands, it's rolling down the side of a mountain, and Shiro's using his best to like hold it, and you really think he's gonna fall off, and it even gets to like the edge of the mountain. Really cool shot because you see the Obsolescence, the hull of the Obsolescence just like break through the cockpit of the ground Gundam, and some glass even cuts Shiro's face, so it looks pretty cool. All right, and here, looks pretty cool. Check out, we're seeing how the ejection system works. So yeah, he actually falls, they kind of have a moment there for a second at the edge of that mountainous cliffside, but in the end, he does fall. So, back at the testing facility, Guineas, which is Aina's brother, we got Norris Packard. Guineas doesn't seem to really care that they've possibly lost Aina and the Obsolescence. He assumes she got away, but is it more of he just assumes she got away, or he kind of just doesn't care? Because it almost seems like he doesn't care, because Packard is a bit more worried and troubled about what's going on and really wants to be able to find her. So Shiro's like in a blizzard. He's probably up in high elevations in the mountain, in the snow. If it really is the Himalayas, who knows how cold it could be for him. But yeah, he's having a hard time being able to get through this. Cool to see some of the air units from Zeon. It's Norse Packard. He's out trying to get Aina. He's sending out a signal for her to try to respond. Although, in her perspective, she's more worried about saving Shiro. So interesting here to see that what she's doing is setting up some remote detonation. And I think that plays a bigger part here later, and it's kind of questionable to me. But yeah, let's keep going. Okay, very cool. Kind of seeing Shiro use some of the supplies he has on him. This might be some standard Federation gear, survival gear, just in case something happens. And it looks like it's one of those warm blankets to use. But it doesn't really last too long. That's too bad. Now, it was funny that Shiro saw some water. And he's like, how is this possible? Where could running water be coming from? And he looked behind him and he saw his ground Gundam sitting there. It had some heat still left from when it was using its thrusters. But by the time he got back to it, all that water had already frozen. And as he sort of, faints from the exhaustion, we kind of see the silhouette of Aina coming to rescue him. Reminiscent of earlier Gundam UC shows, we're randomly now seeing a shot of a colony getting a hole blasted into it, Zaku 1 appearing, and it fires off the gas canister. So this is side 2, and this is the example of what occurred when the Zeons were gassing colonies in order to prove a point. Shiro happened to be there. There's multiple sources of why he's there. One was he was just on vacation, put on his normal suit to go out and help. The other one was he was sent over there to help out. Either way, he watches people die in front of him from the gas, and someone even putting their bloody hand on his helmet to kind of really show the horrors. And this is almost showing, I guess, or reaffirming to the viewers too, what Shiro has witnessed to have the hatred he does towards Zeon, like most people do. It's less that he is fighting because he just has to fight, but he's actually witnessed some of the horrific things that the Principality of Zeon was willing to do. So we get back to Shiro laying passed out. He was just dreaming, or his mind was just playing back another traumatic scenario that he went through in his life. And as Aina is waking him up, he is then reliving that fear, and he is kind of grabbing onto her. He's not really coming to his senses at the moment, but he eventually does. And that kind of makes him think about, as much as he likes her, he hates Zeon and what they've done. And they're kind of, at this point, there's kind of this like conflict between them two about how much they like each other, potentially love each other, but they're on the wrong sides here. Some more cool shots. Just, there's a lot of exposition here where they are, emotionally involved with each other. His hands were frostbitten. She had kind of helped by wrapping them up. He was going to start working on the Gundam, but he needs her help. And there's a lot of good moments here. The biggest takeaway from this is you then see Shiro act very emotional and loving toward Aina. And at this point, it feels very genuine, because during these first 6 episodes of 08th MS Team, we've seen how much Shiro is a very kind officer, kind soldier. He's had to reprimand members of his unit, but he's always been kind about it. He really cares about others. Even if things happen to him that don't work out, he's always wanted to make sure he can prove himself by saving his fellow soldiers. And so I think it's really rewarded here when he's finally then with Aina, and then he can have that heart-to-heart with her. So I gotta say, that's very well done. Something you can't really get done in a movie, and it does take episodes to do. All right, we're gonna see some cool stuff here. They've got an idea in play, and we're seeing the beam saber be ejected from the side of the ground Gundam. Now, remember, this is different than a normal Gundam or GM, where we would have the beam sabers up on the top or the side here. This is on the literal side of it. First, again, what we're seeing now, earlier in the show, we saw where they were going to go reach for a gun, and it had like a little connector point to it. Now, either that is retracted and it comes out, or only the right hand has it for a gun, and the left hand just includes the beam saber part. If you see what I'm saying here, I would almost think too, sometimes how we see the beam sabers used, are they really only in one fixed position? Am I trying to dive too deep into this? But the other part of this is how the hand looks. It looks like it has a glove, a sleeve over the mechanical parts. I don't remember seeing anything like this before. It actually looks really cool and it makes a lot of sense. Or this is a special case for this Gundam unit. I'm going to have to do some more digging on that. And what's cool is you have to see the animation, but you can see all the parts that are allowing that connection to take place between the hand and the beam saber. And cool to see that he can go into the arm and turn up the heat of the beam saber. And you can create a hot tub in minutes, a spa, just by having that beam saber run over the water or the ice, create the water. Great idea. Okay. What a gentleman. You see what I mean? A gentleman. You know, again, it's very cool, this scene. It's been earned where they're sitting together, having their little heart-to-heart. You know, it's very well done. I kind of like in the background how we're seeing that Zeon style, the Zeon maybe family, zombie family, but more Zeonic, high society architecture. We're seeing that in the background. Now, this is Aina when she's a kid. But I like that touch because I remember seeing that castle like in the original Mobile Suit Gundam and thinking that's all crazy and silly looking, but they've stuck to that, and I respect that. And yeah, we're seeing it again back there. Now, she's even mentioning how she doesn't like what her brother is doing, so, again, they're in love with each other, but they're mad that they're on other sides, so they kind of just want to forget about it for now, but they're also thinking about what is going on, but more so, it seems to be 8th MS team is really focusing on Zeon bad, not really showing too much of Federation necessarily being bad. Okay, we're getting some sick dogfighting here. I love that core fighter, core booster. I think it's got a specific name to it. There's actually a anime Robot Spirits version coming out. It's from an option part set, I believe. But very cool to see. I love this design. And I love how they kind of have this battle going on. Okay, so a Federation transport carrier is moving on to the Opsilus, right? And it's really to capture it, get whatever information it needs, etc. Really cool shot here, seeing that GM drop. But she blows it up. And the reason I question this is because they're having this heart-to-heart, talking about Zeon bad, all this stuff. And I know she's maybe doing this for her brother so they don't get access to that information. But it's just, she's just willing to kill those others. I don't know. I'm a little conflicted. I'm sure she's conflicted too. That's a very kind of elaborate and deep kind of, emotional conflict that is occurring right now. She is wanting to destroy the Opsilus in order for the Federation not to get to it. But in the end, she probably killed whoever was piloting the GM, whoever was piloting the transport ship, any other crew of the transport ship, right in front of Shiro, after having, the heart-to-heart they're having. It's, I'm sure it's hard for her. I kind of like that. You see that meme with Arthur, and he kind of holds his fist. There's one for Gundam, too. But, yeah, I guess Aina's taking off. She's getting picked up. She tells the pilot, that Fetty soldier's dead. It's tough stuff here. Tough stuff. And that is it. Kind of a quick recap, maybe, but there was a lot that went on here, really propelling the story forward, but questioning character motivations when they are faced with what they are faced with. And we saw some really cool machinery here. I mean, not only are we seeing the second version of the Opsilus, but we saw some sea vehicles and weaponry at the beginning, but we also see the more air combat stuff going on, which is really awesome. And then that moment where Aina and Shiro finally meet, and Aina does a lot for Shiro. Even if Shiro kind of helped land the Opsilus so she's not hurt, he was frostbitten out in the snow. She helped him out. They worked together to get that hot tub spa going. They had that heart-to-heart. I don't know. I wonder what she's thinking. It's like they could run off together, wink, wink. But, we'll see what happens. as the story moves forward. I guess it's planting the seeds for what happens. So, yeah, guys, let me know what you think of this episode. The more I dive in specifically to 8th MS Team, the more I appreciate it over when I would just watch it before, just kind of watch it. I mean, me kind of picking apart what's happening as I'm watching it allows me to appreciate the world building, how we're seeing specific things occur, like the connection points on the hands or that kind of sleeve-like look for the hand of the ground Gundam, but also the other weaponry and machinery that we're seeing amidst all the character drama that is occurring, and it all works well. So anyway, well, hey, Gundam fans, welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. For today's episode, we're continuing our look at 8th MS Team with the 8th episode, Duty and Ideals. This episode's pretty serious. It's further culmination of things that have been continuing, but they are looked at in a real-world aspect in a way. I don't know, it's pretty interesting. This is where kind of the worlds of the characters kind of change based on I guess everything that's been going on. Before we get started, if you haven't, please subscribe. And as you watch it, and it's pretty cool, give it a like. That helps me out. But let's get started. Last we left off, it was with Shiro, Aina. They're kind of out, in the frozen wilderness, Himalayan mountains, perhaps Tibet. And this was a scenario where one would have maybe defeated the other, made sure they killed the other, I guess, if they were following the commands, what they're supposed to be doing on their respective side, either Federation or Zeon. Aina made sure to have the Obsolus destroyed, the prototype, or the version 2, just so it didn't get in the hands of the Feddies. Shiro didn't really bother trying to kill Aina. They reconnected after that first episode, and they were able to look past all that to see each other for who they were. And again, another big thing about 8th MS Team is really showing the individual that's caught up in the war and what life means to them in general. So what this then leads to is a court-martial. As he's being questioned, is he working with Zeon? Is that why he didn't do anything? And the conflict that's going on inside of him is going by the rules, what's set by being in the Federation, but then his personal interest in someone, which it's a quality that has positive aspects because he's not trying to do something that's necessarily selfish, maybe in the way that he likes someone and wants to be with them, but also he cares about someone. And it even further drives home a lot of his care with how he wants to be able to do things without getting people killed. And that happens in this episode. It's pretty interesting. And then we see Aina with her brother Gineas, and he confronts her about possibly being in love with a Fedi soldier. She's doing her best to deflect, deny, not get him all angry at her or mad. He's quite the loose cannon, and we'll actually see a bit more of that here in a second. But we've seen, especially in the previous episodes, her doubts with her brother. She truly loves her brother, but also recognizes some of the unethical practices he's willing to partake in order to get his mission accomplished. A funny picture they use that they happen to get, that's when near the end of the last episode, when the ships are flying by, able to spot them, I guess they had a satellite camera zoomed in, seeing her on top of him. Looks kind of funny, but really she was pushing him out of the way from being attacked. But just kind of a funny picture for them to use. And it's truly making her upset. You can kind of see the tears in her eyes. One thing I noticed watching this episode, and I don't know what it is. Is it my new monitor? Is it Hulu versus streaming? I don't know, but there's just, it looks, when I say Hulu versus streaming, I mean streaming off of my rips that I have on Blu-ray. But the art in this episode looks very well done. There's a lot of major plot elements that occur in this episode, so it could be that a lot of the budget, and I think I've seen this with previous episodes too, you could tell where budget is put in to certain components, and I would feel this is the episode for that. The hand-drawn animation, the coloring, all aspects look very well done in this episode. And we're going back and forth because the characters, Shiro and Aina, are almost speaking the same things in defense for what they were doing. There's this idea of the rules of engagement, versus an enemy soldier, and their ideals, their morals, their character. And that's where you can see Shiro and Aina are pretty similar in that regard. And, you know, Shiro's confronted and he's asked, you know, if you had to shoot, you know, an enemy officer, would you do it? Would you be able to just shoot the enemy? And what's going through his head is the idea of really not wanting to have to kill people in this war, but not wanting to have war in the first place. And if there's a potential to avoid having to kill someone in battle if you don't have to. And that's brought up a lot in this episode. And even as he's trying to discuss his side, an officer in the back, where you don't see, they have the eyes covered to make him faceless, but just kind of laughs at him, which further drives the idea how a lot of people don't align with the thinking or maybe haven't gone through a scenario where they felt a lot of compassion for another. Yeah, really cool shot here. It's just Shiro looking up at some damaged mobile suits. I just really like the art, the animation, see the details of mobile suits, because that's kind of what we're here for anyway. All right, now we're getting to another story that's taking place where they're going to merge. Is we see a couple Zakus here in the water. Now they're actually looking for some place to eat, and they're thinking of going to a village to get some food. But really, the main commander, who we see in like a Zaku 1 with the commander Finn, if that is correct, if anyone has any specific details on that type of Zaku, please leave them in the comments. But the leader is telling her forces, or the troops with her, you know, we're going to go to the village to get some food, but do not engage. We can't have a bloodbath. This needs to be done properly, which is cool to see. And at the same time, it further shows how individuals within either the Zeon or Federation have good morals and good ethics. They're just following their orders. And who we're meeting is this character named Top. She is a commander for her unit. Let's see, with the rank of 2nd lieutenant. And then she has 2 men who follow under her command, Adele and Arth. And so that's who we're following in these next few scenes. And again, she seems like a cool character because, one, those are some pretty neat earrings. They seem like V-fins, but separated from the head and then put on the ears. But also a lot of Principality of Zeon has that kind of exaggerated either crest, shoulder look based on that Zeon symbol that they're using there. Cool look. Zaku, they'll go back in the cockpit, and then here's Kiki with the gorillas. So even though they're the kids of the village, you know, her village is the gorillas that are the resistance. They're fighting back any conflict, and you know, she's seen what's going on with these Zakus and telling the kids she would to go run back to the village and warn them. And again, just taking a second, just seeing an individual cell here. Just, you know, we got the foreground, the parallaxing. You've got just the I don't know, the way the colors and the shading work. Again, this seems like top-notch animation on this episode. And the nostril. See, there's detail in the nose. Really cool to see the scale of the mobile suits moving. And we've seen them in the water, and I like how it pans up so we get the scale of where they're going to and the size of the village. Oh, look, they've got an underground lair. Yuri, the admiral that we met from before, that met Guineas or talked to Guineas at that party they had, but then was in Odessa and they retreated. He's telling Guineas that, you know, this is a battle that's going to be fought in space. Your project, the Obsolus experiment, that's done, that's over with. And Guineas gets mad and he pulls out his gun and shoots the screen and keeps firing. And again, very good animation here. I really like how top-notch all this is. But it's kind of scary to see how far Guineas is going. He's even willing to not only pull the gun on his sister, but he even pulls the trigger. And there's no bullet left. Now, he could have known, he might have known that there was no more bullets in any of the chambers there. He was just doing that to further scare her, for him to somehow express this anger he has, because he has no other way to really calm himself down. I bet that tells Aina a lot. Very cool shot here. Doing a YMCA. So we can see the people are working in the fields, right? They're sustain on this village farm. And he's got a rocket launcher there, like an anti-MS, perhaps, rocket or anti-tank, whatever the girls can get their hands on. But the idea is they know that the Zeons are showing up at the village to get some food, but they are to not engage. They are going to do what they can to just get them to move along. And then her dad is in the know, so we've met him before, Kiki's dad. He's in this back, larger house. He's watching to kind of get an idea. And we hear him talking about her, and he's kind of proud of her, taking charge. Also, the maid mentioned that she seems to have a thing for Shiro, the Fetty soldier. And they, I guess, don't have a problem with that. They're kind of laughing about it, just saying how she's growing up now. So kind of a cool father-daughter moment. Yeah, and some of the villagers or guerrillas are hiding around the corner with some weapons just in case something does happen. And something does indeed happen. One of the other pilots under Top is like, oops, dropped something, and really drops his heat hawk, and it almost lands on a kid. And so they're already starting some trouble. And Top even gets out of her mobile suit to plead, with the villagers, hey, we just need some food and we'll move along. Back at the bar, we see some other members of the 8th MS team hanging out. And they're just talking about how, the commander, got in trouble. He's actually confined to his quarters. 7th MS team happens to show up too at the bar and saying, hey, I think there's some Zaku's showing up at Village. And the 8th MS team's like, we should tell Commander. We got to do something about it. They're not sending anyone out to help them just in case. So we can kind of see where the members of the 8th MS team picked up on Shiro's kind of compassion that he has. And they decided to take matters in their own hands. So Karen and Mikkel, they show up at Shiro's quarters and they let him know, hey, this is what's going on. And Shiro's thinking there's nothing we can do. He's like, you know what? We got to go ahead and roll out. Now, the old man happened to have a paper signed by Kojima, the main commander guy, that it's probably forged documents, but just saying that they're, I guess can roll out if someone was to stop them and needing to see their papers. So they're taking that, and the team's going to head out and see what they can do about saving the villagers. Yeah, here's a really cool shot. Just seeing the 3 Zaku's there, just hanging out. Again, just cool to see stuff like this because this is drawn very realistically. The shading, the wear, the tear, even the colors. These aren't the extreme green that we normally see with Zaku's. It's a little lighter. Is that supposed to be desert colors or something more? If anyone, has any more detail, please leave it in below. But some other cool stuff. We see the shoulder armor here. It's broken at the top. And the other Zaku all the way over there doesn't even have the shoulder armor. And if I didn't know better, that almost looks like a RX-78-2 or GM shield back there. Maybe repurposed. Maybe we'll get some more shots of that later. So as they're rolling out, Karen and Sanders are standing by at kind of a sniper's distance. And Shiro is with Mikkel in the hover tank, and they're, I guess, rolling out some communication cable so they can still communicate. But Shiro is asking them to take some shots from a distance. Now, Karen brings up the issue with that, where if they accidentally hit the reactor, it could completely destroy the village. But also, he's saying it's better chance, it's lower risk than if they were to just barge right in the village and all start fighting, because you're still going to have that occurring. And, with the, I guess, confusion of sniper fire could allow the Zaku's to disperse, but something happens anyway. Yeah, there's another look at that shield. Yeah, that's totally the GM or RX-78-2 shield. Just repainted and repurposed. And we're seeing some interesting back and forth. They were given the food to those Zaku soldiers or the Zeon soldiers, and this one kid gets given back a bowl made out of shell casing, and the Zaku pilot had a picture next to him posted of like a little kid, so it's probably like his son, and that's why he's acting this way. Again, showing that not all Zeon soldiers are bad. Yeah, and then there's that picture I was talking about, and yeah, just very nice, kind of a kind scene to add in this to give more weight to what's about to happen. So as Kiki's delivering food, she gets picked up by the Zaku, and it's a pilot that, dropped his heat hawk accidentally, and he's kind of being a jerk here. And now this causes Top to point her gun at him. And she's like, he's like, you wouldn't shoot me, would you? And she's all like, yeah, I'll just say that, you died in battle or whatever. I guess because she's tired of his crap, and obviously this leads to something bad. So as we can see, someone just shows up, fires a rocket, completely destroys the Zaku. Very cool. So I guess Sanders is in his mobile suit, I guess mapping something out, but it's just neat to kind of see these controls, how we have maybe the more ergonomic shaped touch controls for the keyboard and just some other analytics there. Just kind of cool to see that. But what's going on is then the team hears that attack that occurred, and they hadn't fired off a shot yet.
I'll cover you.
Just a shot appreciating the cool Zakus we have here. And a Zaku ignites its thrusters, and it completely destroys the house and the occupants in it. Ouch. And that was Kiki's dad. And Shiro finally meets up with Kiki. And Shiro's giving this speech right now because he's saying, all right, we need to draw them to the river. We need to get them out of here. But the villagers want to stand and fight, especially because they attacked them. Kiki's dad is now dead. And, Shiro was kind of saying, let's try to get through this without getting anyone killed. I don't want those pilots to die either. But it's really, the villagers really want to go through with stopping them. They feel like it's the best course of action considering everything that happened. And then Shiro goes along with it because he can see it depends on the situation when you might have to kill someone when you're in battle. And I guess this goes back almost to what he was asked of earlier in the episode is, are you willing, to shoot a Zeon soldier? There's some cool shots of the beam rifle. Another cool shot. So he's asking the Zeon pilot to surrender, right? And then she tries to take another shot off, but he destroys the gun. So he's like, come on, you need to surrender. And she opens her cockpit. In doing so, the villagers just run after her in the Zaku with weapons to just try to go and kill her, even though he was hoping to save her. But because all the villagers are running at her, she shoots off her anti-personnel weaponry, defense weaponry that some mobile suits have just in case, and it rains down and kills all of them. So Shiro's like in the middle of this, no, we don't want anyone to die, let's not do this. Wait, no, we don't want anyone to die, let's not do this. And everyone ends up dying. Now, they're all crying, they're sad, but she is thinking, Shiro, that they all would have been wiped out if he didn't show up. Again, they're sad, they've lost a lot of people, but it's better than the alternative. Yeah, and that kind of leads us to the end, which is kind of a sad ending. A really neat episode. It's very serious. We get to see where the characters, even with good intentions, get them involved in situations that they don't want to have to be in, where then people react a certain way. Again, kind of very dark and sad, but still a good episode. So yeah, hopefully you liked my little review of this episode. Please leave in the comments if you have any more details about maybe the MS that were featured in here, especially those cool-looking Zakus, the Zaku 1 to the Commander type, and the characters they introduced. Even though we don't get to see Top a whole lot, that was a very cool character that they introduced a little bit. Maybe there's some history on that character that we can look into later. But well, hey, Gundam Maniacs, welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. For this video, we're actually continuing our look at 08th MS Team. Yeah, I thought I completed it, but there is a movie that they released, in a way, called Miller's Report, and it has to do with the investigations into Shiro possibly being a spy for Zeon. But before we get started, if you haven't, please subscribe. And as you're watching this and it's a cool video, give it a like too. That helps me out. And if you haven't, check the description below. There's links to our Discord channel, which is a lot of fun, and the Patreon. But let's get started. And who is Alice Miller? Well, it's a new character that's been introduced. She actually works for the Federation forces and investigates, I guess, things that could be ongoing from within. So when we were watching 08th MS Team, we got to an episode where he was under investigation by Earth Federation due to his relationship with Aina and how they kind of met up, but neither wanted to kill each other. It almost looked like Shiro was a spy, so that was being heavily investigated. And Alice Miller was the one pulled in for that. Okay, she also comes up in the manga for 0083 Rebellion, which is additional stories for Stardust Memory. When the GPO-2 is actually stolen by Zeon, she actually has to go in and investigate. And I guess due to the nature of her work, she's looking to see if there's any spies within the ranks of the Albion crew. Now, even if you remember in Stardust Memory, there's this one crew member who was passing on information. And so this manga, I guess, dives in deep to that. So you can get more information about that character in the manga. But this is about 08th MS Team, so let's get back to that. It actually starts with that episode where they're in the desert and they're looking for the Obsolus to come out of nowhere so they can ambush it, capture it, destroy it, however it would go. But as you know, this is that episode where Shiro hangs on to the Obsolus for dear life, hears Aina speaking, recognizes her, speaks back to her. They kind of don't know what to do in that situation. She just takes off with Shiro holding on, but due to this being the Obsolus 2 and it kind of being weak in the thruster department, they go and they crash over in a snowy area. You know what? And real quick, I want to add how cool this intro is. It's very cinematic, and I like how it zooms in on to the circle to transition to the next scene. Some cool shots here coming up because what we're seeing is the Obsolus 2 once it was, or its parts were captured. So if you remember from that episode, which is shown at the beginning of this movie, Aina has the Obsolus 2 detonate as the Earth Federation forces were about to capture it. It killed some of the forces, but it scattered the remains. Now, she got picked up and rescued. Shiro was left behind until the Federation was able to grab him. But it was during this time that the Federation was able to grab all the scraps of the Obsolus. And now this is also what jumpstarts the interrogation of Shiro, because in that situation, the Federation forces feel like he could have done more. He could have taken out Aina, stopped the Obsolus from exploding, etc. Again, another cool shot, and we see the head of the Obsolus having that Zaku head there. And then you can see to scale with someone working in it. Here's a cool shot. They're almost parallaxing layers of the debris that have been painted in order for it to make a complete picture. All right, I like this scene where Alice is interrogating Shiro, asking him why he would do this, why he would do that. The dialogue is very reminiscent of what you would hear in interrogations or cross-examination of witnesses, for instance, in a court hearing. So the dialogue here checks out. I think something that's brought up here is why would Shiro bother trusting someone from the Principality of Zeon? Even though he's saying it is due to just being in love with her. People have to question that. She is as well. And Alice had an experience in the past where she was trusting a Zeon officer that turned on her, and she inevitably had to kill this person that she was trusting. And that kind of set her in motion maybe to be in this employment that she's in, where she does interrogation of potential spies. As we saw that she also did this with 0083 Rebellion, so this is kind of in her wheelhouse. But also maybe it's hard for her to believe or understand Shiro that he really does feel for someone, in terms of her thinking that he should be taking that seriously because he could be turned on. As much as he could be interrogated and seem like he truly does love this Aina person and doesn't want to spy for Zeon, people don't know Aina. No one knows Aina like Shiro does, and could be that she is pulling strings. We see some additional flashbacks as Shiro is describing his story. I'm reminded of the part early on, I think it was the first episode, where Aina was willing to pull the trigger on Shiro. It just didn't have any rounds, and so he didn't get shot. So kind of an interesting occurrence there. And it is bouncing back and forth again, showing more to highlight the relationship between Shiro and Aina. In terms of not only for Alice Miller, the investigator, but for the higher-ups and for the audience, really, to get an understanding of the relationship between Shiro and Aina, and if it is to be believed. It even replays that scene where the colony gets gassed and Shiro is there. Now, that could be him speaking to Alice about why he doesn't like the Zeon. And even when Aina wakes him up from him being in that frostbitten cold, and he immediately looks at the uniform, proclaims Zeon, starts getting angry and agitated, it's almost like it's a defense for him that as much as he loves Aina, it's what Zeon has done that's made him mad. And that he would not side with Zeon because of what they'd done. So, sprinkling a little of that in there, would a story like that be taken seriously by the higher-ups in the investigation? Or is it simply for the storytelling for the audience to see Shiro's perspective? Again, bouncing back and forth consistently through this movie to show the relationship between Aina and Shiro. Just, again, to kind of help give that context. And then we're seeing the scene in which the higher-up of the Federation are questioning Shiro because of everything he did. And he's asked, is he willing to kill the Zeon officer, shoot a Zeon officer if he has to? It was hard for him to answer that. Now we have a new scene here, or at least it was to me, and maybe I missed it in the show, but it's a discussion between the other members of the 08th MS team since Shiro's kind of on a house arrest. There's probably a better term for that, where he's having to stay in his quarters until he gets further notice. Now, one thing that stood out to me, and I could be wrong about this, the animation seemed to be lacking. The art seemed to be lacking, but this could be due to, the budget to throw out this kind of a movie where the scenes with Alice Miller and Shiro are really well done, but these other scenes are not as much. But it's just kind of cool to see the team together talking, how much they care about Shiro, how much they care about each other. Here's a cool shot of Shiro looking at his Gundam that was destroyed. And I've never thought about this, and maybe there's information on it, but I wonder if they used this to build the EZ-8, because we can see with the V-fin missing, but it still has that Gundam face. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. It's cool art regardless. I like how he's talking about how Zeon used their women in the context of making a Federation soldier maybe fall in love with them in order to compromise them. And I think that is super legit. Like, you would have to be careful for that. And if I was Shiro, I for a second would think, could that be the case? I mean, Aina did blow up the Obsolus, getting some other Federation killed, and then taking off in an escape with Zeon. And so you would think, maybe she does like Shiro, but would go as far as she can, but still go with the Zeon cause. Whereas Shiro is able to do the right thing without going against the Federation cause. Although, I mean, again, he could have killed her, but like within the Gundam universe, the Universal Century, it seems like the act of killing is a requirement in order to complete a mission. I mean, could it really be used against you in the real world? You had an opportunity to kill so-and-so and you didn't. And if you think about it, let's say Aina did get away and then she's piloting the Obsolus 3 and kills a bunch of people. Oh, wait, that did happen. Shiro let her get away, kill some more people. There's a lot of gray area here. Especially we saw in the 08th MS team near the end how the high-ranking officials wanted Shiro originally court-martialed, but wanted him killed, executed. And they were even sending people out, even though he was on his last mission, they were going to have him killed after that. So, it's very interesting, the morals that the high-ranking Federation officials have. Does that mirror real life in terms of higher-ups in the military and what they're willing to do? Another flashback scene episode where we're seeing that really cool team of Zaku's. We had Top, which was a great character. Yeah, here's Top right here. Really cool looking character. I love the earrings. It's almost like they're V-fins or something, and it kind of goes along with her chin. But very cool character, because while she's with the Principality of Zeon, she also doesn't want to kill if it's unnecessary. This is from a previous episode. The point may be showing that between Zeon and Federation, people are just trying not to kill if they don't have to. Shiro wanted to drive away the Zeon forces from this base. Now, this is the one where, or from this village, and this is where Shiro was actually under that house arrest, but left anyway with the team. They got orders. It was like a paper that was produced that said Kojima, like he signed to allow it. I'm wondering if that was just a forgery or, you know, underneath the noses of the other Federation officials, Kojima maybe allowed for this operation to take place. I don't know if anyone has any more information on that document that was signed by Kojima. And really what we get from this is Shiro wanted to drive away Zeon from the village. The villagers, though, had already had some casualties, and they wanted revenge. It was up to them. Shiro didn't want to do it, but if that's what they wanted, he was going to help them out. Now, he was able to confront Top in her mobile suit, and I think he was able to get her to surrender, but then the villagers just came from behind, killed her. Again, this is a retelling of an episode, so I don't know if the point of that was to let Alice Miller know what he tried along the way to try to make him seem like he's a good guy. Shiro was sent out for one last mission, though, because they know the 8th MS team will trust him. They've already had some success. But I think in the end, they will want to detain him when this operation is done. And it seems Alice is going off on him. You know, he explained the story, and she's even saying, oh, those are good things you did. And then she kind of goes off, almost like Char in a way, of the future of humanity, you know, what they need to do. And so I think what she's trying to say is the violence is needed. It's a necessity in order for the Federation to prevail. It's weird because she's almost angry that he's right and he's good. It's almost like he was able to stick with his convictions and stick with his morals, and she wasn't able to, and that makes her angry, and she shoots to the side of Shiro's face. Kind of crazy, really. And so it ends with Alice and her cigarette watching the 8th MS team take off for the mission that is the final episode, or next to final episode, actually, before you get to the movie. So that was 8th MS team, Miller's Report, the little kind of compilation movie that was put together. They take some episodes to kind of show off the relationship between Shiro and Aina, his good deeds, but it's kind of interspersed with these the dialogue between Shiro and Alice of, like, you know, saying that he is a spy, he is a traitor, and him explaining himself out of it, kind of showing the differences people can take within the war of trying to go all the way and do the good thing regardless of what's going to happen. And we see with Alice how what she went through had kind of changed her. Curious to see what your thoughts are on this movie. I think it's worth watching if you want a quick recap. But it's not something I think that's super rewatchable all the time, because it's really taken a specific scenario of 08th MS team and really doubling down on that, and that is Shiro's choices with his love. Obviously, this is where it started. You know, what does that mean for Shiro in this part of the war, really? Whereas the 08th MS team story itself, the full series, really dived into where they were at on Earth during the 1-year war, all the different machinery they came into contact with, what the Earth Federation forces were trying to do, you know, a bunch of stuff with the Opsilus that's going on. Hey, Gundam Maniacs, welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. For today's video, we're actually going through, again, the rest of 8th MS team. I've had a lot of fun watching it, and we're getting some awesome episodes going on with this episode called Frontline. Now, before we get started, if you haven't, please subscribe, and as you're watching the video, if it's pretty cool, give it a like. Also, if you're interested in any other interesting perks, check out the Patreon link in the description below. But yeah, let's get started. All right, so we're resuming after something interesting happened. Shiro meets back up with Aina. Both of them are questioned in terms of their loyalty to their respective sides because of the fact that they have an interest in each other. Even Shiro is confined to his quarters, but he escapes with his team to go save the village of gorillas. But yeah, let's see what's going on. All right, we get some ship battling. Always love to see some ships. All right, now we're inside Jaburo. Jaburo. Oh, there's the Opsilus firing its beam cannon. Okay, the Opsilus just destroyed the Federation base in South America. How did that happen? Oh, no, wait, actually, it was a training simulator, which is pretty cool. They were simulating what would happen with all the information they've got of the Opsilus, and if it was to then attack their base. And what's interesting is we're just seeing, I guess, a weapon of the Principality of Zeon that they really planned to use to destroy the Federation base in South America. But also it's interesting that they were able to use that data to really determine, the Federation, to determine that they need to go out and destroy this thing. Now, originally, it wasn't even supposed to still be in production. It was I guess, canceled by Yuri. It seems like if the Principality of Zeon still got the support, they would have been able to carry out their action and destroy the Federation base. Take a look at that big tray. Always great to see giant battleship weapons in Gundam. Now, it's cool to see Sanders looking like this just after this little discussion, because what's going on is Shiro is back on the field. I guess even though he was questioned about his loyalty to the Federation, if he's willing to kill a Zeon soldier, it could be that his deeds that were done with destroying those mobile suits at the village got him the opportunity to go back out on the field. But I guess Sanders was asked to keep an eye on him. And I think it's very interesting because you can see Sanders. He is a compassionate person. We've seen that previously. He doesn't like being known for getting his team killed or the team that he works with them being killed. He's very defensive of his teammates. But now that he knows he has to kind of spy on the commander, you could just tell that it's not sitting well with him, and he's going to have to tell the commander. So they're on a mission, which is to specifically find the enemy base. So they're trying to avoid combat, and I like that. Mikhail's like, even if that girl comes after us, we don't have to fight her. And this is what I love. Anytime Aina is brought up, Shiro stands there with just this kind of blank yet slightly smiling face. And it stays on him. It's like he doesn't even bother answering anything they're saying, which is pretty smart of him. I guess if leading as a commander, he doesn't want to have to jump into that aspect. But also he's able to keep his composure just as a person that has that emotional connection with someone else, and he just doesn't say anything. I just think it's kind of hilarious how I can have this here paused, but it could just be playing right now. They just linger on him smiling. It's kind of funny. Again, Elidor is saying like, oh, that's not fair. And he's just looking at Shiro, and Shiro's just kind of smirking back. Okay, this is cool because now we're getting an airdrop. Just kind of awesome mobile suit action going on. That looks sick. Very cool. Enemy ship right below. That's pretty cool right there. All right, and yeah, Shiro comes to the rescue in his EZ-8. All right, the RX-79G EZ-8 Gundam EZ-8. So let's take a look at this. A very cool mobile suit that I think people are familiar with. When you look at it, it stands out. It's got that white and kind of the bluish, almost teal. It's not necessarily super blue look to it. Very cool, and it's got the Gundam head, but without the V-fin, right? So armaments on this, 35mm machine gun, 12.7mm Vulcan gun, XB SA G03 beam saber. The beam saber emits a blade of plasma contained by an eye field and is capable of cutting through almost any armor not treated with anti-beam coating. Very similar to any other beam saber. Is a YHIYF MG100 100mm machine gun. Blash XBR M79E beam rifle. RGMS SHWF S00109 shield. And then another shield and a 180mm cannon. So special equipment and features: a container rack on the back of the EZ-8 is a container rack for carrying weapon, container, parachute packs, etc. In addition, the rack is equipped with a foldable searchlight. In certain sections, can unfold into a forklift-like mechanism for attaching the container. And we will see in this episode some use of that backpack. Parachute pack, an optional back-mounted MS equipment created by the Federation for pair-drop missions from the Medea transport plane. The parachute pack contains 3 parachutes and 4 thrusters to help in making a safe descent to the ground. Once touchdown has been accomplished, parachute pack will eject would be ejected, so not to hinder the mobile suit performance in ground combat. 2 types of parachute pack were known to exist, and I think that's an awesome touch. We see with this, it's really reminiscent of some real-world war paradropping, and we kind of see that with the mobile suits, and it looks really awesome. We see it in the intro, obviously, but also this episode. So far, they've jumped out of the Medea, and then there's some action going on, but we're going to see them with their parachutes. And then the weapon container for storing spare additional armament that can be attached to the container rack. The container allows Easy-8 to carry a variety of armaments and ammunition for both itself and other members of its squad. Now, it's very interesting about this ground type Gundam that we see in that MS team compared to most is that signature backpack that it has. And I could only imagine the amount of weight that is involved with that. So, and so this is kind of showing that parachute pack as we saw, and you see like the straps that kind of go flying up as it's falling. It looks very cool. It's got the thrusters and everything. Again, the weight on that's got to be unbearable. So very cool. What's interesting here is Shiro has landed on the enemy ship, and he's just telling them not to fire. And it'd be so easy for Shiro to take them out, and he doesn't. Again, this is going towards his principles of trying not to attack or kill if he doesn't have to. That's kind of something that's common throughout Gundam, but I think here in 08th MS Team with Shiro is a lot of the plot and the cause and effect is around his ideas and not wanting to attack or kill people. But this is going to come back to him here shortly. So now we're meeting back up with Yuri and some of his crew. When we saw them earlier, they had been escaping from Odessa. They're all about going back up into space. That's where the rest of the war is to be fought. But now they're having to regroup. And so let's see what happens. Okay, cool seeing a Gundam paradrop down. Oh, look at that. The MSM-04 AT guy. This is a cool classic enemy mobile suit, Zeon mobile suit. And we get to see it in the MS team, has some great animation going on. If we looked at manufacturer Zeonic Company, so keep that in mind. Let's see, it's got a 105mm Vulcan gun, 6-tube missile launcher, mega particle cannon, Vulcan gun, but the main thing here is the iron nail. So the arms, that's kind of what it's known for. It's the rip and tear, similar to like the Zagak. So it's like Zeon had more of that going on when it came to their mobile suit development, which is pretty interesting. Ooh, yeah, it knocked the head right off. So, Karen's getting destroyed here in her mobile suit, and you can see that Elidor, he would care about anyone in his team getting attacked, but you can see the thread of his, affection for Karen here. No way, I'll let you kill Karen. And he's running out there, getting out of his hover tank, running man-to-man, man-to-mobile suit. How is he gonna? No. I kind of like that scene where, Elidor's behind the mobile suit that has fallen, Karen's mobile suit, and then you see the AT guy just kind of emerge from behind, kind of helping with the sense of scale and making it a bit scary. And I like how we kind of see role reversal here, where before Karen was helping Elidor when he was originally hurt a few episodes ago, and the reverse now is he is helping her out. And I think that's kind of cool because, these characters do sort of like each other. Okay, so that's weird. I would not be standing behind a gun of a mobile suit before it's firing. Now, he's doing that to kind of help target it. It's kind of silly, I gotta admit. And I could only imagine the heat, the kickback, if there was any, because it is beam weaponry though. But the heat, you can see in a second what it does. They shoot the AT guy, but I think what's interesting here is, and it could just be the detail, but you kind of see he's just sitting there in shock. You can see the detail of the artwork where you see like scorching or burning, and you see a lot of like damage. Now, I don't think that would be from firing a beam weapon, because then mobile suits would slowly just deteriorate. But maybe they're using that because you can see where he's sitting. It seems to be there's not much just around him. I guess they're using that for effect to show that there is some consequence to being right next to a beam rifle, a giant beam cannon, when it's being fired. See, he even thinks he pissed his pants a little. But again, that kind of adds to the grounded nature of the fact that he was on a mobile suit's arm right next to the gun, targeting it to yell at Karen because she can't see due to the damage of the cockpit, and then destroying that enemy mobile suit before it even gets him. I mean, he risked his life for her, so I guess he's a good guy, isn't he? All right, we see the GA. It has kind of crash landed. You see the Magellan tanks that are coming out of it. And so that guy we saw earlier on the GA that Shiro was looking at, and he didn't fire on or kill, he actually wants to take some of the tanks and go back out and fight them, while the rest of the troops there, the Zeon troops, are trying to create a defensive line before they escape. Just a nice, beautiful shot of some gorgeous mobile suits. You see the sun rays shooting down, the sparkling in the water. So they're loading up supplies, right? The Zeon troops that are left, they're kind of in this cave-like underground base, while the 08th MS team from the Federation side is trying to find them. And we have Aina here, and she's just being a polite person wanting to help out, but in one of these containers she comes across something, letting her know that something nefarious is at play. This is a cool shot here, seeing these DOMs. Very cool looking. Get the parallax. Another cool shot here, seeing the ground Gundam type, seeing the EZ-8. Just some beautiful, beautiful mobile suits. And this is when Sanders reveals to Shiro that he's supposed to keep him on watch. Now, he says he figured Kojima would do this, but it wasn't Kojima. It was the other guy that was interrogating him during the questioning. So they have the Magellan tank that's partially underground just to expose the cannon so it can fire. Oh, he went flying. And see, here's that guy. He finally got to meet Shiro again to ask why he didn't open fire that last time. It was interesting because he's even asking him exactly what the Federation leaders, executives, whatever we're asking, high-ranking officials, are you going to fire on a Zeon soldier? And he asked him that, and he has a flashback to Top when she was in her mobile suit right before she died, and I think he's realizing there are some times where he needs to do that. And so what she's figured out is Guineas is having his soldiers take drugs that push them past their physical limits in order to continue working on the obsolescence as quickly as possible, given that he was told to stop working on it. But it's just strange because really it would work out for Zeon if they were to finish this and attack the South American base. I mean, we saw from the simulator that's what would occur. Oh, that is a sick shot right there. Awesome. So very cool. I feel like this is a culmination of things, the things where he's learning. He doesn't want to have to kill people. Shiro has this mindset where he wants to be able to partake in this war, to end it, to stop it, but try not to kill people. But if there is someone in his way, like the question is being answered, he's really showing his loyalty here. If someone is in his way that is trying to cause harm, like he gave the guy a chance. There was a time when that guy could have just gave up and left because Shiro didn't kill him, but he's coming back to try to take everyone out. I think it's okay in that respect for Shiro to take him out, and he does it gracefully with the beam saber, cutting off the top of the Magellan tank. It goes to fly away, and then he shoots it down with his Vulcan gun. He actually didn't die, so he probably got out of that the top half of the Magellan tank. And so look at this. Yuri, this guy that we saw as some like braggart, pretty aggressive, he's like, glad you're back, I really am. Because now the guy admitted he lost, that was facing Shiro, but he was able to come back. And so it's almost like you're seeing the strange good side of Yuri. And what is it? He thinks the war should be fought in space. Is that because there's maybe less civilians around? They don't have to attack villages? Is there a good side to him? Because no matter the side you're on, again, when it comes down to the personal situations, people could be doing it for the right reasons, even though the greater might be wrong. So they're heading to go back into the underground base. I guess there's some shuttles there that take them to space, but the doors are closing on them. And then we see Guineas over the intercom saying, your private secretary told me everything. Okay, where's this going? Oh, and it looks like she was drugged. That is very interesting. We're seeing the drugs there that Aina found. So the idea is if Yuri dies in battle, it won't reach headquarters, that he was told to cancel the obsolescence. This way, it allows him to continue it. Which, this guy. Oh. And then, yeah, they just destroyed that whole area outside the blast doors, killing all the Zeon soldiers. Wow, look at that. I like how it ends where like you're just seeing Guineas in the dark and it lingers. There's a lot of good dramatic framing that's going on in this episode, where it's like you can feel the character's intention without even having to see them do anything much but stand there. All right, and that is it for Frontline. I thought that was a very cool episode. It kind of upped the stakes in the way, not only do the Federation versus Zeon, but within the Zeon faction itself, because you have Guineas, you have Yuri. Yuri seems more like a stand-up officer, even though he's on the Zeon side, and they portrayed him as kind of bad at the beginning in a way, or an antagonist. But really, you're seeing how far Guineas is willing to go to make sure the Obsolus is operational. And from the beginning of the episode, the simulation showed the Federation that the Obsolus would destroy their South American base, Jaburo. So it's just a very interesting episode there. But what's also cool is we get a look at the EZ-8 that we'll see for the remainder. Very cool looking mobile suit. And seeing the parachutes, the paradropping, all that stuff going on. All the different things we saw, the Magella tank, the GA. Just very cool mobile suit stuff going on, while little intricate pieces are occurring throughout these operations, both on the Federation side to find the base and destroy the Obsolus, and the Zeon doing what they can, specifically Guineas, to get the Obsolus operational and destroy the Federation base. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please put in the comments below what you thought of the episode, any of your favorite mobile suits or favorite moments from this. Again, I really appreciate 08th MS Team now that I'm watching it again, like my third or fourth time. I forget. I'm able to look past a lot of the things that bothered me before, and I'm really enjoying everything about it. Story is good. Characterization's good. The mobile suits we're getting is good. The framing of the artwork is good. So I think there's that connective tissue missing that really has to do with Armoro, Shar, those main characters that we would normally be used to seeing. Bright, I think, is the main thread between them all, but hey, that's okay. This is still a good story. So anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll talk later. Hey, Gundam Maniacs, welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. For today's episode, we're actually continuing our look in 08th MS Team, even though, yes, we saw the last episode and like the kind of epilogue, and then the Alice Miller's report, where we kind of looked more into Shiro, but there was another animation that came out, and it's a little more modern, and it has the same voice actors. So yeah, let's take a look. But before we get started, if you haven't, please subscribe and check the links in the description. There's a giveaway going on, so be sure to join that. Join our Discord. We have a Gunpla building contest going on and a community build going on. Just a lot of stuff. If you have any questions about it, just let me know in the Discord. But yeah, let's get started. So this is called Mobile Suit Gundam, the 08th MS Team, Battle in 3 Dimensions. Why is it called Battle in 3 Dimensions? Well, I have a guess, and as we get through the video, I'll bring that up. Just like you'd expect from any official Gundam production, we have the Sunrise logo, so you know this is going to be real. Okay, it includes that stinger music we all know and love, and the name of the title right here. Gundam Wiki says Battle in 3 Dimensions. This is a battle with the 3rd dimension. Kind of interesting, but yeah, let's see. First of all, look at this jungle artwork. 2013 is when this was produced for a Blu-ray box set of 08th MS Team. So that's far removed from the original release of 08th MS Team. So it's really nice that we are getting kind of an updated look. And this is a great shot right here. This could be a wallpaper. In fact, let me screenshot it. All right, so another thing we're noticing, not only are maybe the matte paintings or whatever is used in the background very highly detailed, we've got parallax already. We've got the foreground a little blurred. We're seeing that desert GM type, so off to a good start. Okay, and so while this has the original voice actors from the Japanese animation, it's only in subtitles that we have English. They didn't use English voice actors for this. So that's different than what English speakers are used to with 08th MS Team. I think one of the key elements that made that successful was the great English dub. But of course, Mikkel writing in his journal to BB, just kind of very cool that we're jumping right into what we know from 08th MS Team. Something to keep in mind is the time frame this takes place in. We're going to see Shiro in his EZ-8. Elidor isn't actually in this, so he could still be at the hospital. So we have Sanders and Mikkel in the hover tank, Shiro and Karen out in their mobile suits. And what's also neat about this is, in the original 08th MS Team, it's not like we got a lot of back and forth between Mikkel and Sanders, really. Sometimes there's some characters that really talk to each other more than others. What this does is establish more of a relationship between Mikkel and Sanders, and it's actually very well done. Right now, they're kind of quiet. Mikkel's thinking to himself, like, he doesn't know how to act in front of Sanders or what he should do to kind of get him to open up. At the same time, Sanders is kind of feeling the same way. He doesn't know how he should be acting to get Mikkel to open up so they can have a conversation. So I think that's a kind of a cool character element they added in here. And they showed Karen in Shiro. Again, it looks just like the art we all know and love from 08th MS Team, but just updated enough where it makes me just want them to make another 08th MS Team series. It probably wouldn't have Shiro in it, but it could have the 08th MS Team with a new commander. I don't know. Okay, and part of this with their mission is they're trying to find the base where the Obsolus is. So again, this is after Shiro gets his Easy 8, so he's been reprimanded. He's been confined to his quarters, but I guess he's able to go out on these missions. So this is before the Shuddering Mountain Part 1. 08th MS Team always did a good job of showing close-ups of mobile suits. Here's an example. They're always showing the feet walking, but this is so if you want to kind of look at this and compare it to how it looked in the 90s animation. But I think they did a great job of making this look modern for 2013, but also keeping it in line with what we'd expect from the original 08th MS Team. All right, cool shot here. So they're on this bridge looking for the base the Obsolus is in, and it looks like someone has found them. Very cool. So we're seeing that goof test flight type cockpit turn on just then, and something's about to get uncovered. That is a Zaku 2. So that is not the goof flight type that we saw from the cockpit. So we can see Karen already got hit. That was from the MS-06JC Zaku 2. So here we see this goof flight type zoom on in over the water. Pretty sick. It's got the thrusters for it. Let's see some more. Battling in the third dimension. My guess is it has to do with the fact that this is kind of a ground-centered, ground-focused sort of a Gundam show battle. That happened here. And we have this flight type goof that we did see in the original show. It just didn't fight. It was escorting the Obsolus. But this time it's in a fight. And because it's a flight type, it can maneuver around these ground Gundams. So they're going to have to think on their feet in order to take it down. But I'm sure that's where Battle in the Third Dimension comes from. Sick shot here because it just came out of nowhere, jumped to be right in front of the sun in order to make it hard for the 08th MS Team to see it. But just cool seeing that red mono eye, seeing the propulsion systems. It's just a really cool suit. And so we're introduced to the enemy pilot here. His name is Kukov. All right, some background of Kukov. He's the team leader of a Zeon mobile suit unit assigned to ambush incoming Earth Federation forces from attacking Zeon secret base in Southeast Asia. Kukov commanded his team on the ground with his aerial MS Goof flight type covering the sky in shallow water. Kukov was calm and level-headed, as shown with his systematic attack against Federation targets. He was confident with his piloting skills and the power of his mobile suit, as he didn't panic against the powerful and well-armored Gundam EZ-8. Kukov was a highly skilled mobile suit pilot, evident with his fine maneuvering technique with the goof flight type in the sky and hovering above water. He was quick to react, being able to move his mobile suit out of dangerous situations. In addition, he was also a marksman, scoring accurate hits against enemy mobile suits. And at this point, Karen is knocked out, which is super disappointing. I was kind of reading something that could have to do with the voice actor wasn't available, perhaps, so they kind of planned the story around that. I don't know. And so we have this point of view in the cockpit of that JC-type Zaku 2, and it's actually aiming on the bridge. So it's kind of cool to see the Zaku 2 used in this tactical manner. Really cool to see kind of this cockpit view again. This is within the EZ-8. I don't know how consistent cockpit views have been throughout the series of Gundams, but we can see where he's aiming somewhere in the mountain. We can see that Zaku JC type sitting there, and it pops up that it's out of range. And something that's just funny about that to me is I had just been playing Gundam Battle Operation 2. I forget what suit I was exactly, but I was aiming at an enemy that was kind of far away from me, and it was just out of range. And I was like, really? So some of these weapons can just be out of range. And we can see that happening in the show. So it kind of brings that consistency. Mikhail and Sanders are out going to rescue Karen, pull her out of the mobile suit. Right here, we're seeing real quick where the Goof flight type is coming in on the EZ-8, and the EZ-8's actually turning over to kind of block the others from getting shot, but I guess that backpack kind of serves as some extra armor. Okay, that was cool. Just then we saw how the knee extended, went into the ground to kind of give it support for it to fire its gigantic gun. So we saw just then where that JC Zaku 2 shot the EZ-8 and it didn't really do any damage. Now, I'm not too sure exactly what it was, but just reading the wiki, it could be this 175mm recoilless rifle. It's the main gun of the HT-01B Magella attack main battle tank. It is remodeled as an MS artillery weapon. It was mainly used for long-distance ground combat, so that makes sense, and can be loaded with high-explosive anti-tank or armor-piercing, fin-stabilized, discarding Sabat rounds. Never heard of that, but we can see that the EZ-8 didn't really suffer any damage, so that's pretty interesting. And the cannon of the EZ-8 completely took out that JC Zaku 2 completely. And again, right now, the tactics being used by the Goof flight type is to use its air superiority as an advantage. It's really just flying around Shiro. It's making it hard for Shiro to move quickly enough in his ground-type mobile suit to get a shot off. And Mikhail and Sanders, are kind of stuck with less desirable weaponry. Sanders says, though, we have to come up with a plan. Mikhail's a little scared about it, but then something comes to him. So Mikhail flings himself off the bridge they're on with a wire or harness or some sort of rope to keep him from falling. This way he can get a clear view of the Goof flight type and be able to communicate with Shiro where it's at so he can get a shot. So here's kind of an example of that. We're seeing the Goof move so fast that you can see Mikhail kind of through it. And because Mikhail's trying to keep an eye out for it so he can let Commander know. Shiro dropped that backpack storage container off the back of the EZ-8, used its thrusters to propel itself up and actually latch onto the flight type in air. So we can see, even though the EZ-8's like a ground-based unit, and in fact it's a rebuilt Gundam, so they had to use some, I guess, random parts they found around, it still has some sort of maneuverability that it can use in ground-based combat that is effective. So when they fell in the water, I thought it was going to be deep, but it's actually pretty shallow. So it's kind of cool that we can see them kind of fighting, but in some, shallow water. And as the Goof flight type tries to get away from Shiro, it's going backwards. The thrusters that it has on its legs start malfunctioning from being in the water. So that's very interesting, just in terms of how it's built for that maneuverability, but it has to be careful being in water. This is something that we see GIFs of all the time. I guess if you frequent Reddit or some other Gundam communities, yeah, this one's shown often. Really cool shot here. So I don't know if it's slow motion for a second or what, but we see like the water droplets above kind of floating around. Just a really cool shot of the EZ-8's face. I just love it. It has that classic Gundam look where above like the mouthpiece, it kind of has those little geometric shapes before going to the eye. Yeah, very classic. Love the idea of it not having a V-fin because they had to like refit things on it. All right, and then that blade of the Goof flight type going right into the shoulder of the EZ-8 very easily. I don't remember if we saw damage related to that in some way or they just repaired it. Because again, this was made later, and beam saber blade right through the cockpit. Again, some cool art it's showing again, but I think they made that chin part a little bigger than it's supposed to be. Cool night shot. Ground Gundam, Karen, back to normal, standing on the shoulder. So here we have again where Mikhail and Sanders are trying to connect with each other, trying to figure out something, and Mikhail's just talking to himself. Sanders offers a cigarette, and Mikhail's like, no, I'm too young for that. I can't do that. And then that kind of makes Sanders a little embarrassed, and he kind of just walks out. Mikhail feels bad because he knows he was just trying to connect with him, so he grabs his coffee, heads out with him, and they kind of chill. And what's cool, just to tie it together, you see like Shiro in his cockpit, just reading his manual or whatever, and looking down and seeing, two of his team members socializing. And so I think that's kind of a good feeling for a commander. And a nice ending, moving up past the Gundam to the moon. Cue the ending theme song. All right, and that was it. It's a short but cool additional story to fit right into 08th MS Team. In fact, I should really look up where I would fit this in within the main story. It was before Shuddering Mountain for sure. Karen's Gundam didn't have the GM head yet. So it's kind of cool though that we have this extra content, just like with the Miller report. It's just this extra content that kind of fleshes out 08th MS Team. It's just cool to see Mikkel and Sanders kind of get along like that. Anyway, so what'd you think of it? Was it cool that they kind of made this little short, and should they do that more? I kind of think so, and they kind of are if you think about Kukuru's Doan's Island of the original Mobile Suit Gundam, and a story that takes place within the main story. It's just kind of expanding on the universe and everything. But yeah, let me know what you think. Please subscribe, like if you think this is cool, and remember to check out the description for the links of the giveaway that's going on to join the Discord for not only the Gunpla building contest, but the community build, which is something that's wing related, something related to Gundam Wing. So anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll talk later. Oh, hey, Gundam fans, welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. With this video, we're continuing our look at 08th MS Team. We're actually on the 10th episode, and this is a two-parter. This one's called The Shuddering Mountain Part 1. You know, from what we know from the previous episodes, the bond between Aina and Shiro is growing stronger, yet a little more controversial within the ranks of Earth Federation and Zeon. Genius killed off Yuri to make sure that he doesn't stop work on the Obsolus. He wants to get that out there, and according to Earth Federation simulations, the Obsolus would destroy Jaburo. And that was based on the data from the Obsolus 1 and 2. So we're going to get a surprise showing of a new Obsolus in this one. Hey, but before we get started, if you haven't, please subscribe. And as you're watching this video and it seems pretty cool, give it a like. But yeah, let's get started. A great way to open a Gundam show, in my opinion. I'm a fan of fighters, jet fighters, jets, space fighters, that type of stuff. We're seeing these jet boosters here, and they look amazing, and just seeing how many, like just looking in the background and looking at how many they have on here, that's pretty awesome. Looks like they're dropping potentially a bomb of some kind. So another function that we're learning about within 08th MS Team. So wherever they're bombing, which happens to be at a mountain, we're now getting a view underneath of what the Zeons are working on, perhaps the Obsolus 3, and there's some shaking going on because of the bombs. So the Earth Federation knows where this is at, and they're trying to stop it. Okay, so this is just awesome. The guy is just in his jet booster, but he's looking around talking, and then in front of him, this goof just appears up in the sky. But very awesome and cool sequence that's coming up here. So the goof custom just destroyed a fighter, cut off its wing, and it's flying down. And then I just love how you see all these other fighters. I just love the visuals here. I mean, the thing is just hanging with its hook off a jet booster and just shooting, holding the sword. This is awesome. So pretty cool here because we're seeing some of the desert type ground GMs here. Okay, we got a Zaku 2, Goof, and a Dom. I love seeing kind of, you know, some of the main Zeon units as they're trying to defend the secret mountain base, because this is where that Obsolus 3 is. Genius and Aina are still there. Mikkel and Elidor, they're at their hover tank, and they've got another tank there. They're going to help provide the coordinates for them to fire on the mountain base that the Federation forces discovered. Now, they even made mention of the mountain taking a different shape because of all the bombing that was going on. And here is just a great shot, something that could be a wallpaper. Seeing in this art style the detailed scenes that they have in 08th MS Team. You know, I've got the Zaku's there, Dom, and the Goof custom. When you could tell when an episode has budget for its animation and how these things are drawn. And this is a good example of an episode that does things well. Norris Packard, he's the pilot of the Goof custom, and he's saying some good things about Aina. He's like the good guy among the bad guys, right? Even from before, the way he reacted to some of Genius's plans, the way he looks after Aina, he seems like a good guy, very similar to Rambo Rawl, who was also in a Goof from the original Mobile Suit Gundam. Interesting that the voice actor is the same voice actor in terms of the English voice acting. It could have been around the same time when they were hiring the voice actors for Gundam Works, and I'm sure they kept in contact with some across. Now, I didn't look up the reasoning for it, but I just think it's very interesting that this character type has the same voice actor, and they're in the same similar mobile suit. So I don't know if there's more of a connection, if that was on purpose or accident, or they just went with it because it's similar. Curious if anyone has any information on that. Now, as for the Goof custom, I mean, the Goof from the original Mobile Suit Gundam, it was already an awesome mobile suit. They did a few things here to modernize it, kind of stylizing it more, I guess, the scale of the certain components to it. And we see like the hand gun it has. It's different than it being just that giant hand that looked a little goofy. Goof. From the original. And like what we're seeing here is it looks like it's an add-on part to it. And it still has like its sword, its grappling hook that provides an electric shock. So it still has a lot of those same elements from the original Goof. Okay, the Goof custom featured multiple changes to the MSO7B, including the elimination of the awkward 5-finger 75mm machine guns, replacing it with a normal manipulator and a wrist-mounted 3-barrel 35mm machine gun. The coil-like heat rod is replaced with a magnetic grappler wire that connects and disables an enemy with an electric charge rather than damaging them. The grappler wire could also be used as a repelling line that could slow or even half the descent of a falling Goof in the right conditions. The shield of the Goof was modified so that it not only stored the Goof's heat sword, but it is also capable of carrying a 75mm Gatling gun, greatly enhancing the mobile suit's firepower. So, not only that, but what we'll see later on with this Goof custom is its movability. It's got, some standard thrusters that a Goof would have. But, they talked about some things here that kind of, make it effective for its agile movement on ground combat. I mean, this is a ground-based sort of series. And when we saw the Goof before in Mobile Suit Gundam, it was in some ground-based combat. But regardless of that, between the hook and its thrusters, it can maneuver quite well on the ground. So another thing on here is for story reasons, but the Goof custom unit piloted by Norris Packard features a flare launcher which is installed at the back of the mobile suit. The flare fired from the launcher is for signaling friendly forces nearby, and there is a story reason we'll get to here shortly. Cool shot of 7th Team entering the mountain base. It seems like there's some executive level fighting here on where to proceed. Within this mountain base, there are some bombs that need to be disarmed, but they're wanting to... Kojima doesn't want to push further, doesn't want to lose any more mobile suits, but no, he's kind of been ordered to just keep pushing through regardless of what happens. It might end up being that in order to get to where they need to, they just need to destroy the entire mountain. That might require nuclear missile, and it might even just be done by the reactors of the mobile suits as they're destroyed in there. So it's almost like they're being sent to their death. Kind of disturbing. 6 shot of these snipers here standing there. I just love the way that looks. And we can kind of see in the mountain up that little glow up on the top left. I guess that's where a mobile suit, I guess it blew up, but I think they say that it didn't have a meltdown. The actual nuke didn't go off. Now, this is cool looking.
Let them come out.
And there you go. Just sick seeing the Easy-8 because it looks great. Fighting the Zakutus when we see some really top-notch animation there. And I like how it's not beam weaponry that he was using. It was kind of the standard issue machine gun. And there's a skatey boy skating in with the flare. Reminds me of something I use in GBO2 regularly. 6 shot right there. So look at that. Like, she can see out of her cockpit the heat blade, I forget what they call it, and holding it up right over her, about to like stab right into there. That is pretty scary. I just wanted to shout out the Zanzibar class, the Kurgan ship. That's what they're trying to use to escape in this mountain base. So, I mean, this is something we saw from Mobile Suit Gundam, but this is the specific version that's an 08 MS team. And it's cool here. They're having this talk, Ina and Packard, and he... I guess they're kind of having a heart-to-heart. He says he cares about her, and she's talking about how, well, he could detect that she must be in love with the way she's acting. And then she says, yeah, that's true. And then she's telling him how she looks to him like a father, and that just is exactly what he wanted to hear. That's how he's felt. And that makes him so happy that he decides he's going to go out there and he's going to defend this base, even if that means he dies. And so it's kind of shocking because that is exactly what Aina does not want to have happen. And so the fact that she then decided to be that personal with him and share her feelings in that way, that made him feel like he needs to stand up and protect her for that. It's kind of an interesting dynamic here that we didn't really expect. Just another cool shot here. See the Goof Custom standing there. We see another mobile suit in front. Which mobile suit is that? I think we're going to find out here shortly. But again, I can't stop praising the way these shots are composed. Okay, so since Norris Packard has decided to go out into battle, and she didn't want that to happen, it's like she's going into evil mode, right? Where she's got to do what she's got to do to save him, but she doesn't want to fight because she doesn't want to have to fight Shiro. So yeah, it gets pretty complex. I like how they have the team out on the surface. They're kind of positioned in certain areas, and then Mikkel and Elidor, that they're in their hover tank, and they're like hearing something. They're like, "It's an elevator. It's coming up fast," which is kind of a cool entrance for the Goof. Just look at that great shot. It just comes up out of the ground as fast as possible, ready to take on the team, and it just looks fantastic. And this is where you can see with the shield, and it has that attachment. That's actually a Gatling gun on there, so it's cool that it's got all that going on. I just wanted to point out, we see Karen. She's in. You remember, she's been damaged in her mobile suit. The mobile suit took some damage before that she had. So this one is that ground Gundam type, but it's actually got a GM head. So it's kind of interesting. I love when it stabbed the tank with its sword. You kind of see the oil or whatever, like kind of shoot up and splash on its face like blood or something like that. Very cool imagery. While that fight's happening on the surface, it goes back to underground where the Obsolus is, and Guineas is standing around with a bunch of scientists. I guess they're having a release party. Oh, look at that in the back. DirectX SDK, AMD K6 3D. That's fast ADA too. That's pretty funny how it has just some random stuff. But he I guess, yeah, they're having a release party for the Obsolus 3, and they all take a sip from the drink he's passed out, but it kills them all. It ends up being where he is the only one that has any ownership over the Obsolus itself. Now, I think that's pretty interesting, because especially if Aina gets back into it, does she even know that he killed all the scientists? Just some more cool action. Again, this episode is really all about the action. It's really hard to sit and talk in depth about a lot of story elements, because really this has taken the story elements and became the action set piece of the series, one of. But right now we're having Shiro in the EZ8 versus Norris in the Goof Custom, and it's just a great fight scene. Very cool. I love, especially when we get a sense of scale. Shiro and Azizier is falling to the side, but we can kind of see, the streets and the buildings and the electrical wires above that kind of help give the scale of, this mobile suit battle that's occurring. So at this point, Norris Packard has set off the flare, and it's red. And that's really saying, hey, I'm going to be behind. Go ahead and go. Aina gets word of that. And, she's not too happy about that, because she did not want this to happen. She doesn't want to lose Packard. So an interesting confrontation happens here where Shiro's just saying out loud how he doesn't want to lose Aina. And then, Norris, in his mobile suit, hears that, and he's like, so you're the one that she's fallen in love with. And Shiro is using his disabled arm to fight against the Goof. It's kind of crazy, but I guess it works. Yeah, so, and because he mentioned he wants to marry Aina, it caught Norris Packard off guard, and he got slapped in the face with his with that Gundam arm. So, kind of funny. Okay, yeah, and the Goof Custom with Norris Packard just takes off after, he gets the information, and it's kind of interesting. Is he just trying to flee because he doesn't want to kill that guy that Aina loves? It's interesting. So look, we got these two mobile suits that are coming up with the Obsolus 3. So let's take a look at them. This is the MS-07H8 goof flight type. So what's really cool is just to see further use of the goof, other than the goof custom being kind of that flagship from Norris Packard, and actually with the rest of the Zeon soldiers down there, really, if you think about it. And then you get this one, which is awesome. Now, it's a goof. What's interesting in flight type also, so it's got some extra maybe thrusters and exhaust that's used to help it navigate the ground, but also the shoulders. Now that looks very interesting. That's the same thing we see from the GP01FB. So that is the GP01 that is made for more space. Yeah, I think it was a full burner, I believe, something like that. It was made to be used in space combat or flying around a lot more. It's got that same thing, except this is like on the shoulders themselves instead of like an extra part to it. So I wonder if it's kind of related. So it's just very interesting to see Ina at this point, because she's just monotone, firing. And like she's that angry, I guess. Between Shiro and Norris Packard, those two were the triggers for her decisions that she does. It's very interesting. Is there any brainwashing done to her on Guineas's part? Does she know that Guineas killed all the scientists? Did she just overlook that? Maybe she didn't come across them, but making sure that everyone gets out alive after she found out that he was drugging. I don't know. There's a lot going on here, but maybe I shouldn't be looking too much into the details. All right, here we go. Obsolus 3, it's about to fire. Some things I read about this is it used the data from the first and second to create the third. One of the things was to help when it was in flight. One of the issues I think Obsolus 2 had was when it wasn't able to stay in the air and it had to crash land. It's got two Minovsky flight systems on either side, but it also still has the beam cannon, a megaparticle cannon, but I think it's used in a way where it can move around and select specific targets. So, like, look at that, just moving around, just destroying everything. Okay, just got to say that's a cool shot of the EZ-8. Got to get a Robot Spirits one of that. But if we were to look at the Obsolus 3 real quick, flight mode, rear flight mode, it's very interesting because not only was this made from the flight or test data of the first two, but it was the data of the first two that made the simulation that the Jabber base would be destroyed by the first or second one, not the third one. So this third one getting out could have really decimated the Earth Federation. And obviously, it seems somehow the Federation was able to stop it. It commences the awesome 1v1 with Shiro, Norris. Shiro's missing an arm. So you would think then the Goof custom would have a leg up in this, but let's see what happens. Cuts him right in half. It's kind of a bittersweet ending to it, too. It's like you see Shiro in shock, but it was like as he was cutting the Goof in half, the Goof was still able to shoot and fire at the tank behind there, killing those pilots as well. Awesome shot. He was saluting. I love the cockpit is open. Again, the detail to really show off the scale. Whoa. So Shiro at the end's like, I'm leaving the service. I guess he just got tired of people just getting killed, people just dying. As good as a leader as he seemed to be, and I think it's because he wanted to keep people alive, and that worked out. He just doesn't want to see any more death. I'm just assuming that. To be conducted. But no, this is part 1, so obviously part 2. All right, so there we go with a very fun episode of 8th MS Team. We are seeing the characters at their wits' end. Awesome cityscape battle. Not only are we seeing Doms and Zaku's, but that Goof custom. Highly detailed fight scenes occurring where guns are shooting at armor, and we're seeing the detail, the animation. This is just a great episode to watch, and even the thematic ways in which the characters progressed here, or the mobile suits. I love the elevator scene where the guys in the hover tank are like, it's coming up an elevator, and it just comes out of the ground. And then Shiro also being disabled, the left arm, the left arm because of the Goof Customs wire. and then he was using it to kind of block then because he couldn't use it, and then eventually he took it off to use to hit to fight with. That's just amazing stuff. So anyway, yeah, let me know what you think in the comments of this episode. Again, I thought it was super awesome. Curious what you think. Well, hey Gundam fans, welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. For this episode, we're actually continuing our look at 08th MS Team. We're actually at the 11th episode, which is a part 2, Shuddering Mountain, part 2 to be exact. Where we left off, it started getting heated between Genius's Zeon forces and the 8th MS Team. Also between Shiro and Aina, since they were lovers, they were brought back together, pulled apart, and now having to fight. So very interesting to see what's going to be going on here. Hey, but before we get started, if you haven't, please like and subscribe. And be sure to check the links in the description below for the Discord channel. It's real fun to hang out in there. So, yeah, let's get started. So we start with Genius looking at the Opsilus. In fact, what we're going to be seeing here at the beginning is kind of a recreation of how the last episode ended, because this is where Aina is actually getting into the Opsilus to take off. She's kind of listening to her brother after seeing the horrors of war and what's going on. Essentially, people that she loves are being hurt. And so I guess that with her brother being there, it kind of brainwashed her to get back into the battle. And just for some background information here, so again, we're on the Opsilus 3. We'll see in the Gundam it's Opsurus. That could have to do with the translation from the Japanese to the English. But you know, it's very cool to get a look at this compared to the Opsilus 1 and 2. It was more of a circular orb-like thing, like a giant evil Haro, which is a great idea, by the way. But then by the third iteration of the Opsilus, it now has legs, and it's a little wider, and it still has that cannon spot right in the middle. Now, something that this reminded me of, and I thought it was a cool callback, is the Big Zam. So it could have been, while the Opsilus is Genius's project, he could have took inspiration or maybe some shared engineering documents from Zeon of the Big Zam, because they're very similar. Now, the Big Zam, yes, only has 2 legs instead of the 3, but also I noticed like it looks like it has a giant curved and spiky shoulder pads. It also has the same head, kind of, even though different sizes. For the Big Zam, it looks like a Zeon head if you look closely. It has that snout exhaust and in the way that the visor is divided for the mono eye. And then it has that beam cannon slot right below that. Now, if we look at the Opsilus, it's pretty much the same thing, just proportioned different and modernized. It's got the 3 legs instead of the 2. I think that third leg really sells the idea of this being something creepy and fantastical, but having that sci-fi to it. Now it's hard to see. We'll see back on the other screen, but there is a little, Zaku head that we've seen before with the Opsilus, and there's one on here too. So it has those features: the snout, the visor look, and then the shoulder pad style things with the spikes on there. And then here we have it. So we got a close-up view of Genius standing in front of the Zaku head on the Opsilus, so you can get an idea. So what are your thoughts? Do you think the Opsilus took inspiration from the Big Zam, being part mobile armor, but having those legs? Yeah, I find that very interesting. So Aina finds her brother Genius. He's gone all mad, and she asks what happened to all the other scientists, and he's saying they got all drunk. If you remember from the previous episode, he kind of did sort of a party for launching this Opsilus, for it being complete, and he had them all drink champagne, potentially, that was poisoned, and they all died. So she hasn't picked up on that yet. And in Zeon fashion, it launches from underwater. That seems to be a consistent theme with Zeon stuff. It seems to be they're really efficient with water-based things, and a lot of times they keep their stuff underwater. Firing its laser, the Opsilus 3, we get a look at some cool ground GMs. Sick shot here, because the goof flight type is already awesome, but the design of this Opsilus 3, it's just really cool. It's just really cool. And so another part from the last episode was him saying he's leaving the service, and so now they're all freaking out. He can't desert. Karen Along with Sanders, was asked by higher ups to keep an eye on Shiro, and for Karen specifically, if Shiro was to desert, to kill him. Yeah, and while we're getting a cool shot of the ground Gundam, another ground Gundam with the GM head, Karen is shooting at Shiro. And so, it's kind of interesting what's going on, because Shiro is saying he's leaving the service, but really he's going off to do the right thing, and Karen just doesn't understand that. They're really thinking he's deserting. Just kind of a interesting storytelling method that really just ups the drama without really making sense, as you would assume characters would be interacting or communicating a little more. And just to call out, even though it seems like Ina's all bloodthirsty, she did strategize in a way to where what they're trying to carry out will stop the Kurgan, which is their cargo ship with all their the people from the underground base. She wants to make sure it gets away unharmed from the Federation. Oh man, look at this shot. I love where that attack, how the Minovsky cannon just kind of like, or megaparticle cannon, powered by the Minovsky engine, just caused the ground to just be turned into to lava essentially. And just, I love the look of these ground GMs, the reflection in the visor. And we kind of see how the lighting is really showcasing the light from the heat of that weapon on them. This is just a cool shot to have as like a wallpaper or something. And I guess that shot was supposed to be like a warning, and she's saying, do not cross this line and we won't engage, because really with the Obsolus, it could just tear things up if it really wanted to. So luckily for most involved, Ina still has that sense of humanity in her, even though she's on a bloodthirsty rampage. And so Shiro then hears this, and he's all like, yeah, I knew that was Ina. So yeah, he's going after her. But the Federation officials don't want to go with her plan of, hey, ceasefire, let's draw this line with a plasma weapon and no attacking. But yeah, the top ranking Federation officials are like, nah, we got this. And she actually gets out of the cockpit, exposing herself to the Federation to, I guess, prove her point, to kind of plea for what she wants to do. And Ina actually, stands out there to plea that, and that gives time, for the Kurgan to take off. Even the goof flight types, like, we're going to go meet at the rendezvous point, and the Federation is considering. Then all of a sudden, while Ina's standing out on the cockpit, these mirrors open up where that particle beam cannon would be. Here's a cool shot, kind of seeing where I guess the beam would fire from the center. We have the mirrors that are around the cannon area that I guess are supposed to maybe reflect or kind of increase the strength of the laser, but just also kind of cool seeing the like unnecessary spikes on the shoulders, but also that Zaku head there. It just seems goofy, but really it's not. It's awesome. And it's crazy because Guineas, her brother, was willing to do this while she was standing there. Now, this isn't the first time that he's been willing to put her life in danger, but I guess at the moment, the reason she's with him in the first place is because he knew he could use her. She was feeling like an aggressor to use the Obsolus and get out, and he, of course, was fine with that. Okay, that was pretty cool to kind of see them start to melt away and then just explode. Dang. That's some crazy Gundam death. And so because Guineas fired the Obsolus, that really then negated Ina and the truce she was trying to get with the Earth Federation, which they didn't agree, and then they were starting to agree. So in the end, the Zeons are the bad guys, right? And I kind of like how Kojima's like, we're no better than they are. And he's just seeing on the television screen there, the monitor, Ina in front of the cockpit. He's seeing how horrible this is all turning out. Now, this is cool because we're seeing some GM snipers that are being sent out into battle for a specific task. So I kind of like this way of world building while showing some badass mobile suits. Okay, so really cool. The GM sniper has this sniper rifle that's plugged in somewhere to power it. And you got to understand, with the distance between the mobile suit and that shuttle, it's going to need those precise shots. And specifically hitting the engine just to get the thing to explode. It's devastating to see Ina witness that, because she was working so hard to try to stop people from getting killed and trying to get those people to safety. So Aina gets pissed, back in the Obsolus, about to fire that mega beam particle cannon at the Earth Federation officials, the base that's in that area where Kojima is. And on the viewfinder, I guess, Aina is noticing Shiro walking up. And so she's, obviously that's going to cause a lot of emotions to stir up. And while distracted, the beam cannon still fires off and causes a lot of destruction. Now that's crazy. This is like, that Obsolus obviously has a powerful weapon. And we saw with the simulation a few episodes back how it would take out the Federation base in South America. So just what it's doing here is pretty crazy. I mean, this is a formidable weapon up against the Earth Federation. And I wonder if maybe it was successful enough that then they would have to have Amuro intervene and take out the Obsolus. We can kind of see the damage that blast is doing to the mobile suits, how it's completely destroying the outer shield, armor, etc. And Mikkel and Elidor are just inside the hover tank, being protected by Sanders and Karen, but they made a comment about how it's getting hot in there, and, luckily they're able to survive this. Yeah, so look at the damage that blast did. It took the metal coating of those shields and melted them, and the melted liquid portions were then being pushed by the Force. Not the Star Wars Force, of course, but the Blast Force. Just really cool looking art here. And we get a moment where Ginius and Aina are actually having a real heart-to-heart, and they even speak about their family, about their motivations. So at least we get some sort of resolution for that. So it's really worth watching. And it's pretty crazy. Ginius just doesn't agree with anything she is saying. Shoots her in the chest. It's pretty crazy. And luckily, Shiro, the hero, there to save the day. She goes to rescue her. But again, shot in the chest. And then from the back, you can barely make it out. It's kind of camouflaged, right? The GM sniper shooting right at the Obsolus 3. Oh, that's pretty cool. It cut through and came out the other side. And so Ginius fired the beam again, but I guess from the distraction of getting shot, it allowed it to kind of move off track, I guess, and not get them directly. But I think the heat would be enough. Oh yeah, the heat certainly did it. And it's cool, there's these, I don't know what they are, fuel canisters, something to that nature on the legs. Snipers hitting those specifically to cause it to fall. Yeah, it looks like it's a gas that might help with some sort of movement of the legs. Yeah, Kojima's calling out that top-ranking commander or official guy, just by firing on them that... I guess essentially he's saying there are rules to war. So I guess it depends on the morals of the individual that's in those positions, what they're willing to do, not do. Some things never get traced back, like Ginius killing the Yuri and his team that were supposed to help get everyone off that base, and instead Ginius stayed behind to finish the Obsolus. Aina wakes up, Shiro and Aina hug. That's a nice bit to kind of get near the end on. It's kind of interesting that Commander Kojima and Mikkel are kind of sharing a scene together, but they're completely different types of characters, and to that point, Kojima's just like, shut up. So kind of a cool setup here. So, Shiro's back in his EZ-8 Gundam, and, his right arm is injured, so he's using his left hand, Aina's using her right hand. They are working together in a Gundam. All right, so Shiro, Aina, and the EZ-8 going after Ginius and the Obsolus, but there's a GM sniper that's been ordered to take out Shiro. So there's kind of like this three-way battle going on. Man, that is just brutal. That GM sniper beam rifle that we saw take out the that shuttle from earlier is now directed at a mobile suit, and it's just melting the thing away. Now, what is he typing? This is insane. Really cool shot here. This is, Ginius has relaunched in the Obsolus. He's looking down at the EZ-8 cockpit open. Aina, Shiro sitting there. Like, now you two. And so while Ginius is about to engage with this full power shot, Shiro and Aina in the EZ-8 just jump into the cannon. The Federation soldiers are like, evacuate, and he's like, there's no time for that. So he knows it's the end. Yeah, and look at that. I guess the heat blast just decimated it. The Federation base here. I think is it the big tray though? I forget. I need to look that up. But regardless, what's interesting is, and we'll see what happens, the EZ-8 is still in the canon of the Obsolus. Now we can make out some of the animation here, but it looks like we're only seeing like the top half left of the EZ-8. And then the Obsolus, the EZ-8, fell into the top of that mountain, possibly dormant volcano because there's water underneath. That's where the Obsolus had launched from. They fell down there. You see all the waves, then a huge explosion. And then, the 8th MS team, everyone that has sort of fallen in love with Shiro, all running to see if he's okay. And it's cool. We can see in the background, there's a mountain and there's a giant hole in it, which is pretty insane. I would think the top of that would fall, but I guess just for a dramatic effect. All right, and then, after you see everyone kind of running towards where Shiro could be, it says, not long after that, the war ended. Narrated by Shiro himself. That's the end of this two-parter, but we're going to get some more information in the next one. But I thought this was a very cool episode, just kind of showing the three-way struggle that occurs when it's the Zeon versus Federation, and then the individual's morals and what they are living for. That kind of contradict maybe one side or the other. Also, it's real cool to get some more mobile suit battles, even though it wasn't as much mobile suit on mobile suit. We just see the Obsolus, we see the GM sniper, even the sniper firing at the EZ-8, and just how things were destroyed, seeing beam particle cannons just melt things away, turns things into pieces. There's very cool animation to see in this. So yeah, let me know what you think. Leave a comment below and like this video if you thought it was pretty cool. But anyway, from that, do you agree about the Obsolus Big Zam connection? I would think within Zeon, that's just part of the evolution of any kind of other weaponry design or something like that. But anyway, yeah, thanks for watching. We'll talk later. Hey, Gundam Maniacs, welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. With this video, we're continuing the look at the 08th MS Team series, and I'm actually at the real last episode. Last time was Shuddering Mountain Part 2. This is called Last Resort, and this is almost like an epilogue. While the last episode ended in an interesting way where we don't know the whereabouts of Shira and Aina, in fact, they could be dead, this kind of gives us some more resolution, not only to the characters, but also to the war in general. It's very interesting. Some little tidbits that are hidden in there. So yeah, let's take a look. Hey, but before we get started, if you haven't, please subscribe. Check out the Patreon. There's a link in the description below. We kind of do some fun stuff, movie nights, exclusive content, etc., etc. But yeah, let's get started. Okay, this starts with the date of the 24th of December of 0079. Now, we know during this time period, it's nearing the end of the one-year war, even if you look at other stories like War in the Pocket, where that took place. There's a lot of pivotal moments that occur here, and that seems to be all throughout Universal Century and the Earth Sphere during this time, where, which side will it actually, come out on top. In the case of War in the Pocket, they stopped the nuke. In the case of with the MS team, they were able to stop the Obsolus. So it's very interesting how it immediately starts with this Zeon pilot, and he's like, hey, we're going down with the ship. And it's like, well, who is this guy? What is this all about? Interesting that all this stuff is being introduced right at the end of the series. And he says, I'm not going to let you kids die not like this. And they're just showing within this room. We'll find out what it is. There's a bunch of kids. Why is there focus here? He even goes as far as telling them they have an important mission to complete. So again, what is this all of a sudden at the end of 08th MS Team? Where's Shiro and Aina? Really cool shot here because we're actually seeing, again, we saw that this is December 24th of 0079, and we're seeing some battling that's occurring above Earth. There was a lot in the Earth Sphere that was going on. This in particular, and we'll see here in a second, it's above South Asia. Cool though to see the Musai and the Gelgoog lasers flying around everywhere. And I want to add some, I don't know if this was done intentionally, but a lot of the music during this part, and I noticed some of it during 08th MS Team, but not too often. It really sounds like Zeta Gundam. There's a lot of the instruments in the orchestra section that reminds me of Zeta. And it's funny, this guy's like, you kids will live on, and I guess he's putting them in a Komasai shuttle and sending them off. And we see like the Musai's about to blow up, and the Komasai shuttle has exited with those kids. And just to give some background on the Komosai, it is a type of re-entry capsule used by the Principality of Zeon during the One-Year War. This is something that was shown in Mobile Suit Gundam, 08 MS Team, MS Igloo. It's probably been shown in some other Gundam media. And it's really just for transport because we can see the armaments is just two Vulcan guns that are mounted on the nose. It was one of the primary methods used to bring personnel and mobile suits to Earth before the introduction of the Zanzibar-class mobile cruiser. Crazy, so they're in Earth's atmosphere. If you look into a lot of UC Gundam during the One-Year War, especially some of the videos I covered of those side stories, there was a lot of these issues that had to do with the atmosphere of Earth having to do with having to escape Earth and having to, figure out how to get out of Earth's gravity, but also for people in mobile suits up in space coming down to Earth's atmosphere, you would just burn up. You had to use special equipment or be in shuttles made for reentry. So this Gelgoog was protecting the shuttle, and this pilot put themselves on the line to make sure the shuttle got down to Earth safely. We've seen Earth Federation soldiers talking to villagers here. That's pretty cool. Okay, Mikhail starts talking, and we kind of see some wreckage of mobile suits, tanks, different type of weaponry since the war. Now, the war is over at this specific point. The beginning, it was still 0079, but this is actually in 80. Mikhail says 00 whatever, but this is actually when the 08 MS team has been disbanded. Okay, and Shiro and Aina still hasn't been found. In fact, you would think, okay, if Shiro didn't die, he went into hiding because, as we saw from the end of the last episode, top officials of the Earth Federation wanted to reprimand Shiro, even kill him for his acts, even though, again, it's all up for debate on if what he did was right or wrong. But at the same time, it's very plausible to think Shiro killed himself to destroy the Obsolus because of what would happen once the war ended. He would probably be detained, if not executed. And so Mikhail's given a lot of background information that there was this kind of post-war reorganization. So members of the 8th MS team got, sent to different places. Who knows? But Mikhail was one of the only to be discharged. And with that, he decided to use this opportunity to go look for Shiro. And it probably has to do with the fact that being in the battle that the 08th MS team were in, all the battles that they were in together, the commander Shiro seems like a great commander. At the times that he had to reprimand Mikhail, he was also a good mentor for him. And so he's compelled to look for Shiro, and along with that, Aina. And Kiki shows up once again. I guess she's native to that area, or that's where she grew up. That's her hometown. And I guess as Mikhail arrived, maybe he sought her out, or maybe the plan was for them to meet up so that they can try to go and find Shiro, because Kiki had some strong feelings for Shiro. Now, it might not necessarily be that it was romantic. It could have been that she just looked up to him like an older brother. She knew that he liked Aina. Everyone knows that, so I just think it's cool that she still cares about him. Okay, so as they're going down the river, they come across this hatch. It has the Principality of Zeon emblem right on it, so they're starting to do their investigations. You would think that at this location, anyway, there would be a lot of debris, whether that's Zeon or Federation. And this is where they come up to that Komosai carrier. They seem to have found it. And, they go inside to look around. It looks like people had been living there. We can even see clothes that are hanging, potentially for being dried. Okay, and in this frame, we see the focus is the hand reaching in to grab something. But if we look at the disc, the floppy disk potentially, or maybe some new futuristic physical format that they use in the future to keep things protected. Let's just go with that. It says Dr. Flanagan on it. Okay, Flanagan. Does that sound familiar to you? This brings us to the Flanagan Institute, okay? So the Flanagan Institute was sponsored by the Principality of Zeon, which was established in June of 0079 at Balder Bay Colony of Neutral Side 6 to investigate new type phenomena. So what's interesting about the beginning of the episode is we saw these kids, that they were called kids, that were supposed to be the future, that they had a mission They were put on this transport shuttle, just sent down to Earth while the Musai ship blew up. So obviously they were important. And seeing the Flanagan disc tells us that these kids were probably new types. So it's a collection of these new types that were gathered during the 1 year war. Who knows what happened to their original parents? And they've now crash landed on Earth. And it looks like it just happens to be in the area that Mikkel and Kiki are at to search for Shiro. So very interesting that that's occurring here. And it kind of ties more into the 1 year war in general, especially on Zeon's side with what they were doing with their experiments, with their weapons, with their plans. And Mikkel wakes up the next day, some strange kids standing over him. And they're all, Kiki and Mikkel, they're tied up on a raft with these kids standing with them, taking them somewhere. Really cool shot here seeing a Gelgoog mobile suit. Probably not the same one that we saw just burn up and disintegrate in the atmosphere. But just pretty neat that we're seeing all of these artifacts of the war scattered throughout. And they're being walked through the jungle to this house that's probably in a remote area, really, if these kids are able to survive here. Okay, that's very interesting. That seems scientific, researchy like, where you see these twins that look exactly the same and they're both holding some stuffed animal, kind of creepy vibes there. So now we meet this character, and he seems to be the leader of the kids, probably maybe due to his age. He's a little older, but he seems to be really sticking to the military theme of authority. He has that Zeon uniform on, and he's kind of treating people in that way, not in a bad way, but more of a place of authority. So this is very awkward, where we're seeing them feed a mummy with blue hair. No, but it's someone that I guess was very badly damaged, and they're wrapped up. Just kind of an interesting little thing that's going on. And it's interesting here. They're speculating why the kids are here in the first place, why they're not turning themselves in to the Federation or Zeon. And I think the main thing here that these characters don't know has to do with the fact that they were these kids that they were being experimented on. I don't know how much that they are still aligned with carrying out their mission, or how much they feel that maybe they were being used. Were they kidnapped? And so they would rather not have Zeon or Federation find them because they could be further put into these experimental operations. Or it could be simply that they are just hiding out there. They are aligned with the mission, and they have no issue with it, but they're just waiting out until whatever the next plan is. So Mikkel and Kiki actually break free, and they go searching around, and they find the kids dump that body of that blue-haired person in here. And again, very interesting what's going on here. And Kiki yells out to them, saying that that's not the proper way to bury someone. So Kiki's calling them out for not being sad, and they're like, "We are sad. Our hearts and minds are one." And each it seemed like different kids were saying that, as if we're kind of seeing some new type ability manifest, where they're able to sort of share emotion, which is a consistent quality of new types that we see throughout UC Gundam. And it's kind of like hinted out here just a bit. And because they said the name of that person they're bearing is Aina, it shocks Kiki and Mikkel, and they show a picture of Shiro, and they're like, "Have you seen him?" And they say, "Yes, but he's dead." Just wanted to point out, great shots in this last episode. Great music throughout. I don't think I'm doing it justice. I don't think I do any of these episodes justice when I just kind of skip around and talk about them. That's really just for commentary and discussion. It is worth watching through this episode. There is something about it that it is a feel-good episode. And this is just an example of that, because this is some amazing art, and it's playing some great music, and it feels good. It's different than what we've been seeing in the previous episodes, where there's a lot of death and destruction. This seems to be a little different, and I really appreciate it for that. So, Mikkel and Kiki go out at night to the supposed gravesite of Shiro, as the kids said, and they're going to try to dig him up and confirm if he's really there. And the kids, not the leader guy that we've been seeing, but the other kids kind of show up to tell them the truth. How he's not there. Now we're getting some interesting flashbacks to what looks like kids being experimented on. So it's further expanding on this kind of subplot that's emerged. We see Dr. Flanagan there. They had documents listing each kid, and even one of them, or all of them, it said erased, as if they've erased their mind. And that means something here in a second. It's very interesting because this main kid leader of the group of kids has this dream about what happened and wakes up. It's almost like he is understanding how he has, in some way, been lied to himself. That might be some of the motivation and the decision to potentially let Mikhail and Kiki know of what happened to Shiro and Aina. And what's interesting is the kids are talking and they're giving their names, and all of their names are names of the 08th MS team. Sanders, Karen, Mikhail, Shiro. The main leader kid guy, his name is Shiro. And part of them, these kids feel like they're finally getting their identity, as we saw on their documents. It said erased in that little flashback sequence. So for them, it's a big deal that they have this identity here. And the main kid, Shiro, he almost doesn't want to have to give up the identity that he's gotten. And I think, Mikhail and Kiki understand that, and to try to put them at ease, like, no, keep your names. Those are your names. And between Mikhail and Kiki and the kids, you can kind of see where there's some sort of resolve that occurs as the other Shiro is kind of letting it all out, everything he's gone through, and I guess not trying to hold on to it too much and be so defensive. Interesting how they're showing it's snowing. So where they're supposed to be is in South Asia, but there are some regions that are higher elevation or a little further in the north that would have snow. That's something I looked into on the episode where the Opsilus takes off with Shiro's ground Gundam and they land somewhere that had snow. So again, still South Asia, possibly near or around Tibet. Kiki's wanting to get more information about where Shiro could possibly be, and he lets them know they're north of here. And what's interesting here is they wake up the next day and the kids are gone. And Mikhail and Kiki are like, well, maybe this was an illusion. Was it an illusion, or is it maybe that whole conversation between the kids, Kiki and Mikhail, kind of led the kids to understand maybe they have something they should be doing. They should go off and go do something. I don't know. I find that very interesting that occurred here, and I don't have the answers. And when they're kind of guessing where the kids could be, the idea is, they're searching for a new world, a better life. And maybe that is just overall just kind of discussing the yearning humans have in general for life, always trying to find the next best thing, because it's a bit abrupt. And I wonder if there's more, maybe in some side stories, there's maybe some story implications of this event occurring. All right, so we see Kiki and Mikhail walk up to a cabin. And, out near the cabin outside, we see these two figures sitting at a table. In mountains in the background. We're getting to this mountain range where there's a lot of snow, and they went further north. So I'm assuming this is near Tibet. And there we go. So Shiro, Aina, living together, a peaceful life. Very cool, in my opinion, to see this. Aina herself has become a Gundam. She's got a little pilot in her, so that is pretty cool. Character development for these characters. It's kind of like a happy ending. And just seeing Mikhail so happy is great, and Kiki's sad. I bet she's so happy to see the commander alive. Maybe she's a little sad in a way that, he has this life with Aina, but that she is just so happy, though, that he is happy. That's kind of the way I see this from how she's being animated, her reaction. It's very well done. And the last shot is seeing them talking, moves up, nice music, and then it ends. So there you have it, Last Resort. Again, I feel like I haven't even done justice by just skipping through and talking about it. Although that's the point more. It's just the discussion. Curious what you guys think about it. One interesting thing, though, is that we know in by the time we get to Char's counterattack, an asteroid falls on or meteor falls onto Tibet, and that is potentially where Aina and Shiro are. Maybe they've moved since then. I don't know if there's any other, and I kind of did a little bit of digging, but I didn't know if there's any future stories that have to do with Shiro, Aina, or their kid. There doesn't need to be, but it's just kind of interesting. I think it's a super happy ending that they got, that we don't normally see. And I like how this last episode, that's the happy ending, doesn't need to be watched along with the full series to kind of get a cool ending anyway. Again, this is like an epilogue that really kind of dives into what could be happening next to kind of give that, good resolution. But then we have the whole thing with the kids from the Flanagan Institute. Where did they go? What became of them? I'm sure their lives have changed drastically. If, in fact, they were kidnapped, they had their minds erased. Are they trying to maybe find who they were? Are they trying to take revenge? Or are they just trying to maybe live a normal life? It would be interesting to see what comes of that. So I've completed 08MS Team. I think I'm going to do a follow-up video later on to kind of just talk about my overall thoughts on the series as a whole, some standout mobile suits that were in it. But really, when it comes to this episode, this was great. Curious what all you guys think about it. Let me know in the comments. Yeah, I'm really curious. And if you like this video, yeah, give it a like. But anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll talk later.